There it
Go,
is.
here we go. Here we go. Here we go now.
Party time.
I got cans of water next to me. I'm gonna have to do so much peeing at some point.
You get you a nice bucket, Gary. Keep it right next to your desk, and then you don't even have to get up when you go pee.
Good point. Good point. All right. Let's give these folks a couple of minutes to get up in here.
The tweet is out.
I sound like Will's mom.
Oh God. oh boy.
That's good. That's good.
Let's see.
Clever.
Let's go, says WWE Front Row. We go live early. Oh man, you guys don't even know. Wrestling with the MMA is in the chat. Front Row's here. Yeah, we'll set us up a schedule. So now we're timed.
We're organized here, people.
We're a little late, actually, according to the schedule. So
we're trying to make this better for the people, man.
Oh, Dr. Red Tyler is here.
All day.
DTA. Don't trust anybody.
All day.
Yeah, we're off and running, Dr. Red. Off and running. Okay, so I'll have to do a little leeway with the exact notes, but I'm trying to see Will real quick because I know you gave me this descriptor here. I was trying to see.
I put it
in the YouTube video.
Yeah, it's there.
Look at you! Oh my God, this guy! I love teamwork. I love that. Oh,
Give me
so
5.
good.
Where you at?
Oh yeah.
I got it first.
Rob.
I told you 5, Gary.
You're a child. You're a child.
Oh, Sunday night. We're feeling
Okay.
good. Hope you guys are feeling good. It's been a good weekend. Yesterday was my anniversary. It was a lovely day. And now I'm ready to talk about
Will, for whatever reason, woke up in a super good mood today, and he is just on fire, like messaging us with stuff. So, I don't want to call him out or anything, but
listen, we're just trying to be organized here, trying to give the best product we can to the people that spend their Sundays and Tuesday nights here with us, hours on end. It can be. I'm trying to make it less grueling.
Grueling. Was it
Rob?
grueling?
Grueling is a word. I know you don't know a lot of words. It's a word that means like really hard. So, yeah. Where's the joke? Come on, guys. Where y'all at? I set you up for that one.
That's where Gary.
I lost my train of thought when Bob went into like a Beavis voice or something. Whatever he was doing like, there, just like randomly turned into Beavis.
That's hard.
Really hard. Oh, I love that shit.
Oh boy, Gary was on fire today with the memes, man. I had to message him like, dude, stop, man. I'm trying to freaking have dinner. I'm trying to have lunch here, man. I'm not even supposed to be looking at my phone. And you're over here.
You're coming between you. Your memes are coming between Rob and his family.
Yeah, I know, man.
You got to think about that before you post these things. You can't just willy-nilly.
I posted. I don't get to control like when they get seen. I post those things like late last night. So
you need to think about people's. You need to think about people's families a little more.
You know me, man. I like my sleeping habits are so weird anyway. So I'll be in the bed. I'm wide awake, 3 a.m., 4 a.m., whatever. We both my wife and I were raised in generational poverty, and one of the features of that's not a sob story. It's just one of the features is like the houses are typically noisy, so we always have noise on. We sleep with the TV on. We can't sleep in quiet, so it's not like our bedrooms are ever quiet. Like I'm disturbing the peace, but like 3 a.m. I'm sitting here looking. I'm just like freaking giggling my tail off. That's what wakes her up, man. She's like, "What the freak are you laughing?" I'm like, "Sorry, Gary's me." She's like, "Freak Gary, man." Always Gary and Will. Freak up.
I'm just imagining Rob giggling his tail off. That's just a funny.
That's exactly how you imagine it too.
I bet it is. I bet it is.
I just imagine him like peeking over at Tanya. It's like,
Hey, I've been known to like wake her up too, man. They're like, hey, look at this. Trust me, you're gonna love this. And she's like, you sorry mother.
that doesn't sound like Presbyterian talk.
Oh, that's absolutely Presbyterian. Ask a front row, man. That is distinctively Presbyterian talk. We are not like pietists about stuff like that. There's things we don't do.
Well,
we don't take the Lord's name in vain, but like, I gotta, my language isn't always what it should be. Guilty.
Listen, the Bible doesn't say nothing about thou shalt not giggle your tail off.
Good point. Amen.
Oh, hey Rob, have you recovered from your first interaction with our sponsors over at Manscaped.com?
Man,
got a lot of good reviews about our discussion.
I'm about to go in for another cut, man. about time, man. We're past the. We're getting right.
Did you already grow that fast?
God.
Look at me, man.
You might need something a little more
Wow.
industrial.
Hey, that's why I need 3.0. This tray will.
You might need a 4.0 or a 5.0. I don't know.
Yeah, man. I need something with like 5G or 6G on it, man. I mean, these trucks they are nice. They're nice devices. They're handy, but boy, it's like, it's like you got to be careful, boy. Those truckers will. They will. Well, when they say no nicks, cuts, or whatever, that's a lie.
Don't believe that. Don't believe that, people.
If you guys want to help us get conversations like this in front of more people, make sure you've liked and subscribed. Make sure you share the link out. And we're just trying to bring these quality conversations to a larger audience.
That's exactly it. So make sure, you share it on Twitter and everything else. Hit that subscribe button. We love you guys. And don't listen to what Rob says. The Manscaped engineering team spent 18 months perfecting the electric trimmer. 18 months they spent on that thing. And they just released the Lawnmower 3.0. It's got a cool USB charging stand. It's got the LED light that helps guide you. Maybe that was the part Rob was missing since he's got the 2.0 and he couldn't see the forest for the tree, so to speak. I don't know. When I tell you this thing's premium, though, I mean it's premium. This thing is the top of the line. It's got a 7,000 RPM motor, but it's got quiet stroke technology, so you won't wake up everybody in your house. Like Rob's literally laying next to Tanya at night and just shaving his nuts, and she never wakes up for that. It's just only while he's laughing at the memes. And so, anyway. If you're hearing us right now, we want you to experience it for yourself. Be like J. Cal. He just went and got one of these things. If you go to manscaped.com, you can use the code NWAPOD and you get 20% off and shipping. Manscaped.com. NWAPOD. Go do that. All right. And let's go ahead and start the show. What's up, you beautiful people? This is Gary Hornet. This is the NWA. It is the podcast celebrating the past, present, future, history, legacy, and tradition of the greatest pro wrestling entity of all time. We're talking about the National Wrestling Alliance. And as always, I am joined by the other members of the Bearded Trio. We're talking about Hey, It's Will Daily. Hello, Hey, It's Will.
Good evening, everybody. Welcome.
And the Dr. McLovin is what he would prefer to be known as. Dr. Rob Stinson is here.
Good evening, guys. Thanks for hanging out with us, man. Beautiful Sunday.
I am so happy to be here with you guys on Sunday. Everybody in the chat room, thank you for joining us. And if you're listening to this later, thank you also. You're just supported. We appreciate you. And today we're going to start off by hitting some news, and then we're going to be talking about the Great American Bash 1986, which is today is the anniversary of one of those shows. That occurred with a big NWA World Heavyweight Championship main event. So that's going to be fun to dive into. And hopefully, if you guys saw the links early on, we tried to be ahead of it this time so that you would know what we're going to be talking about, so you had time to watch it. I know I said WWE Front Row in the chat, who said he knew what he was doing on Saturday. And I've seen it twice now, so feeling pretty good about it. But first, let's spend the little bit of time we got left in Will's schedule for news. Talk about the news.
We have 3.5 minutes. Go. I'm just kidding.
All right, 3.5 minutes. There was a Carnyland Town Council meeting on Thursday night. If you're a member of the Patreon, you were able to be a part of that. I think there was something like 25 people in there, but we were joined by Joe Galley, Nick Aldis, and the president, William Patrick Corgan. And they were there to take your questions. I mean, Joe pitched a couple at them, and then it was up to whoever said they had something to ask. They were able to ask. Rob wasn't able to be there. Technically, Rob wasn't able to be there because he was tied up with Eddie Kingston. By the way, if you haven't seen the latest edition of Piper's Notes, could not get better timing than that. Eddie Kingston. Well, that'll be a news item for a minute, but
it was on. I had it on in the background. So just so you know, I wasn't absent. I just we had other work going on. I did have it on, so I was able to listen and hear WWE Front Row, or just Front Row's outstanding shout out for us, and we appreciate that love, and the NWA fan was strong. Hashtag NWA fan was strong tonight. So,
yep.
Super sweet of WWE Front Row. He did mention to Mr. Corgan about hey, are you aware of stuff like this show out there that, keeping the, as we always say, keeping the flame alive. And said he was. And I think the coolest part about it was he talked a little bit about how he'd had some dark days during all of this and depression, but that Nick actually kind of translated that over to him. Hey, pay attention. There's still a lot of people in our corner. A lot of people got our backs, and there's people still talking about us right now in positive ways. So Billy, basically said that helped bring him back around to do something. So we're happy to hear that. Fellas, when you were listening to it, though, I mean, what kind of stuff stood out to you?
Well, I think, just as you said, I mean, there wasn't like an earth-shattering announcement, and I think there was a little bit of buzz that we were going to hear something, definite, set in stone. But what we did learn was just more optimism around the fact that the NWA is not going anywhere. They are coming back, and they're working really hard to find the best way to do that. And so William Patrick Corgan reiterated that. Nick Aldis reiterated that. And so that was just really encouraging to hear, that they would come in front of us and basically reiterate. And Corgan did say that he had gotten a phone call earlier in the day that was very positive. We don't know the details about that, but could be a wrestling event or some kind of show coming up in the future, and that we should, he said that we should expect to hear something soon. So that was really cool.
Yeah, same thing. I mean, nothing but positivity. Like I said, nothing earth-shattering, but it was good to get that reassurance. Just, hey, when we have a certain standard of quality of production and expectation that we're committed to meeting. We were told in the Patreon by Maureen that we will be getting something this month. I'm not sure what that amounts to, but they're coming back probably sooner than later in whatever capacity that amounts to. And of course, we knew they would. Again, if you've listened to Will out there on his various outlets, from the Hot Tag to some of the other shows he's done, Standing Streamer, whatnot. I mean, the message has been the same. They're not going anywhere, and they're coming back, and they're coming back soon, and they will deliver. And of course, our champion has been out there reassuring the public too with his open letter, which I'm sure we'll get into, and excellent video he put out yesterday. But we're in good hands, guys. It's going to be okay. And this month, Maureen says, something NWA related is coming.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm excited to see what that is. I think my biggest takeaway too was that they do feel like they've got some sort of a plan going forward, or at least they're thinking about it now, and that's the important part. It's in the works. They're pressing on and stepping forward with the whole thing, which is, it's felt kind of stagnant, and they're not even thinking about things. I thought it was interesting to hear him talk, Corgan. I mean, not even just like nationally and like what's going to happen with COVID and everything here, but just the future in general. He's talking about globally thinking, and I know he mentioned a lot about like India and China and just these opportunities that like people don't think there's a place for a new addict there. He's like, yeah, these places have like 1.5 billion people or something like in one of these places, and you don't think that they're not going to have like new stars they can latch onto and new things they can get into. That just interested me, just like even hearing him talk about that. So like you really see, you feel like the spark is lit in him again. Like he's thinking about like ideas of like everywhere to attack this thing, and I thought that was really cool. It was nice just to hear, honestly, from him. Like Nick's been out there off and on, so it was just nice to hear Mr. Corgan also talk about it, which was a little different than what we've seen. He's been kind of radio silent for a while.
Yeah, absolutely. It was just overall, it was super encouraging. It was cool that they opened up for questions, and that's a gutsy move, and you're not going to get that from any other wrestling company. People were saying that during the meeting that we're speaking out. It was just like, what other wrestling promotion do you get to sit and have FaceTime with the president, the champion, and actually ask questions? And it was just a really cool time.
Yeah, and news-wise too, just for what it's worth, WWE Front Row, who was a part of that in the chat, mentioned that one of the things that stood out to him was that he talked about forward thinking, that new stuff would be forward thinking. What do you think that could look like? That is an interesting question, because he did mention that he didn't see like power actually working for now. I wonder what he's thinking, like as far as from here on. Well, what does that mean, forward thinking, I guess?
Yeah, it's an interesting thought. I don't have a clear speculation of what that means. I think it's just kind of par for the course when you think about NWA producing wrestling content that doesn't fit the mold of mainstream wrestling. I think they're going to look to be a little more creative, and if this is a reality. And one thing he did mention too that really stuck out to me, that a very prominent music industry colleague of his had predicted that there's probably not even going to be concerts in 2021, like big live events. So obviously we hope that's not the case, but if people who know what they're talking about are saying that and predicting that, I think their head is probably in a place of like, okay, if empty arena or whatever is the new normal, how can we be the most creative with it? And I think that they're going to come up. I mean, these are the same minds that brought us Carnyland. You know what I mean? Like they're going to bring us something that is ultra creative, without compromising that prize fight mentality and the way that the company's built.
Right, and it wouldn't surprise me either. And again, we don't have the direct inside scoop on this, so don't take this for anything other than. But just as my opinion, it would not surprise me to see our champ. He's aching to defend this belt. He wants to defend the belt in some way. So it would not surprise me to see this go into another, almost like an Aldis Crusade type deal, where he's visiting some smaller promotions and not devaluing the belt, defending against lesser names or anything like that. But just for instance, like, and maybe we'll talk about this in a minute. We dropped some AWF content on the NWA channel yesterday. That's a small little territory in Northwest Georgia. It's actually the longest running independent promotion in the Southeast, but everybody comes through there, from Aldis to Kevin Nash, Scott Hall, Ric Flair. The Rock and Roll Express have a very, very deep history with Paul Lee, who's the owner and promoter, Nationwide. Paul Lee is very controversial. Some people hate him, others love him. He's one of my really good friends, and he has provided me with opportunities that I never would have had otherwise. But seeing Aldis maybe appear in stuff like that, I think would be perfect. And I don't think that's outside the realm of possibility. I think, but when it comes to the NWA, they want to make sure that the standard is where it's always been, which is at the utmost. So, I don't know. What do you think about that, Gary?
Well, yeah, I think that's 100% what's on his mind. I can elaborate a little bit on one thing I had heard. The Billy did mention, so I think it's safe to say, as previously, but I never want to speak out of turn with anything if I can help it that's not based in fact. But he mentioned that with COVID doing what it's done, it's ruined a couple of things, and like touring was one of the things they had on their plate at a certain point. Like they were getting ready to announce like possibly touring. I had heard through the grapevine that was going to be a thing, and obviously Billy has a relationship. Mr. Corgan, I should say, has a relationship with Live Nation and those folks. He was going to be doing a tour with Guns N' Roses through all of that. So maybe that was somehow connected to the dealings he was having. Maybe that's even the dealings that he's got going on with, as far as the industry news that Will just mentioned. Maybe that's where he's hearing that stuff. That's speculation. I don't know about that part, but anyway, just I don't see touring being out of the realm of possibility for these, especially if folks like our champ Nick Aldis are willing to travel. Then maybe that is something that they throw out there. If he's willing to give it a go, then I don't see why not. Speaking of Nick Aldis, too, I do want to make sure I mention one of the nice pieces of news I thought that I'm excited about personally, and I think everyone should be, is that Nick did drop the news. Also, he had just filmed a pilot for a training show, like a training documentary, I guess you could call it. He and Tom Latimer had shot some stuff over at Tried and True Pro Wrestling, and he had, I think, tried to pit Billy, and Billy wasn't, he's trying to get Billy an idea of what they're doing, but he's got the pilot. He's currently in the editing it. So he was saying in that conversation that he at least hoped to have it as like a Patreon exclusive or something, if nothing else, but I'm sure that he'd love to have it like be a regular featured part of the NWA product. So I'm open for good things like that. Anytime I hear something like that, immediately my mind goes to things like, I don't know how MMA fans we have here, but if you've watched things like The Ultimate Fighter and that sort of thing, that actually got me into UFC back in the day. And I think something like that could be really cool. Like if they can develop some sort of a system and show folks working their way up in the ranks and like what the process is for training and becoming a professional wrestler. This could be good stuff. I mean, we've seen attempts at it with things like Tough Enough and that sort of thing. So it'll be interesting to see what kind of differences Mr. Aldis has in mind when he's going into this thing. But I'm excited to see that. So hopefully everybody else is. I get that done. At least that'll be some new.
Let me add
content.
something to what you're saying, just to piggyback on that. And again, I'm going to plug this AEW thing a couple of times. It just so happens that one of our featured talent in the promotion is Alex Taylor, who is in that school, that Tried and True school. He teaches along with Tom Latimer and legitimate talent, works alongside guys like Crimson, and he is the inaugural, what they're calling the AEW Viral Champion, which is sort of like their version of the TV title or the TNT Championship. It's defended on the arena show that they do, and I think there's an episode coming out today. It might already be out. I'm trying to talk those guys into letting us put all of that on our channel. If you guys like it and would like to see that, please go over there and like and subscribe and let them know, hey, we want to see this on this channel to get what you're doing out to a bigger audience. So their digital presence is not as big as ours is, and that's the only reason. It's not that we're trying to be egotistical and get that junk over here, but we'd like more people to see that stuff. So
yeah, and if I could, just to give him a shout out, WWE Front Row sent me some notes over from the thing, so I'm just going to read through them real quick. If we missed anything here, likely you'll hear it. We just want to present everybody with everything that we know based off of that meeting so far. He's got a note here that wrestling content coming soon, likely modeled after other companies' blueprints. They did talk about that. They've been looking at some of the things other companies have been doing. But power tapings would wait until they can safely do them in the studio with fans. So we kind of covered that a little bit. The question of Zicky Dice did come up during that conversation. Zicky Dice is under content. That was kind of where they left that discussion, but they did talk a little bit about Eddie Kingston saying he isn't under contract with the NWA or AEW at this point that they're aware of. They would love to keep working with him if at all possible. And Ricky Starks also came up for what it's worth, and Mr. Corgi just saying that he was proud of what Starks had accomplished so far and loved working with him. Billy said that he is very proud of Thunder Rosa and Mission Pro Wrestling. He thinks that that's a really cool concept. He hopes that they can work together, and she is still the NWA Women's World's Champion. So let there be no question about that for whatever reason that he's hoping they can have a great partnership and a working relationship. But he said one of his main goals is not to create subpar content just to satisfy Patreon subs. they will provide value in any way they can and in their own ways. Nick shared a story in the middle of the thing about how he loved in the power tapings that there was the live crowd that shut down snarky fan chants. He said he was really proud of that. I thought that was just a cool story. I forget how it actually even came up, but was talking about how he thought one of the cool things about the NWA audience is the audience there when people start those, like, quote unquote smart fan chants, trying to be a-holes or smart asses. Like, everybody just immediately kind of shut it down and was like, no, we don't do that here. Like, we're into the show and what's being presented to us. And they did say no current plans to work with AEW, but Billy is open to any discussions with any company where it makes sense. Billy spoke about his strong relationship with Joe Koff from Ring of Honor. That he did say they do talk pretty regularly still. But Billy did say they're making changes to the way the NWA is going to be presented, and says they're trying to be very forward-thinking. And of course, the other note that I see here is that just Billy talked a little bit about his depression in the early pandemic days, but how the fans continue to support and uplift him. And Nick also echoed that sentiment. So those are the main points I wanted to give Front Row shout out. He was taking those notes during the actual meeting itself. Did you guys have anything else you wanted to add about that meeting, or shall we move on?
That's good and thorough. Thanks, Front Row. Appreciate it. Thanks for that rundown.
Is it just the best?
He is. Yes,
He is. He is. My favorite.
Anybody is hashtag NWA fam is Front Row. He is a godsend.
Yeah, absolutely. So with all of that said, if you guys haven't checked out, from Friday on our YouTube channel, there's a brand new episode of Piper's Notes. Piper Stinson, the better of the Stinsons, in my personal opinion. She has her own show. Completely. She has her own show where she gets to interview a lot of different folks, talking about music and just everything in general. And all is not just wrestlers, but a lot of wrestlers. And it's a very cool show. If you guys haven't checked that out, you got to check it out. But this week's episode, delivered on Friday, features the Mad King himself, Eddie Kingston, and it's an outstanding interview. I loved it. I'm really proud that it's on this is the NWA Podcast Network here, and it's really good stuff. And especially great timing, because the next news item that we had here is that Eddie Kingston debuted on AEW Dynamite this past Wednesday. So, Rob, you guys couldn't have nailed that any better. I mean, of course, all credit to Piper for locking down that interview.
She did her action research, man. She was on it. She follows Meltzer and all the rumor mills, so she was like that. Send him a picture of this cute face and see it. Not my cute face, her cute face.
Yeah, and who's gonna big time Piper? Nobody. Nobody's gonna try to big league her and not do the interview after they locked it in. But I have no shame in admitting, and I don't mean this as a knock against anybody, but I don't regularly watch AEW Dynamite. I did tune in for this whole segment with Eddie's debut and his match against Cody. Unfortunately, he came up short as far as the match itself goes, but delivered a fire promo at the beginning and had some great interaction with him. And my personal favorite was with Arn. His interactions with Arn, for some reason, I just really enjoyed, about knocking his jaw off his face, or he swore on his mother's eyes that if he said another word, he was going to gouge his eyes out. And that kind of stuff was a lot of fun. But what did you guys think of Eddie Kingston making his debut on AEW Dynamite?
It was brilliant, man. I mean, the fact that he led with a promo, I mean, that's who he is. He's going to talk before he takes you to town in the ring, and they let him do that. And I don't pretend to know what goes on behind the scenes with planning and booking all that, but I do feel like, I mean, he was 100% allowed to be himself, which I don't think Eddie Kingston cannot be himself. So, but he was allowed to come out and I say allowed like it's, I don't know how things work in AEW, but, it seems that he was given the freedom to come out and be himself and cut that promo and put on a hell of a match, man. I mean, it was super entertaining. And I'm like you, Gary, not a knock on AEW. I just don't you know, there's only so much time in the week, and you know, I'll catch up on newsworthy stuff, but I don't typically watch it live unless, you know, I know something big is going to happen or it's a big event or something. But this was definitely something I went back and watched the whole segment as not live, but shortly after on DVR, like just to experience it as it happened. So it was a really cool moment, I thought.
I just want to jump in here real quick because this is important stuff, because I'm going to run out really soon if I don't say this. We're getting reports in the chat that people want to buy us beer, but the link does not work. So,
oh, no.
FYI.
No. All right. Hang on.
So anyway, just throwing that out there.
I fixed it. Don't worry.
Rob, did you what'd you think of Eddie Kingston on AEW Dynamite, and how did that impact you going into Piper's Notes with
right?
with
Yeah. I watch AEW. When we're not doing our show, you know, we go head to head with them with Dark. Our show does, so you know that we have the Tuesday night ratings for. So I don't get to see Dark every time. I usually go back and watch. I like AEW because I really like Brody Lee a lot. Always have. I don't know what it is about him. I love Chris Jericho. I'm an NWA guy, and I think something about them like strikes me as like traditional, you know. So I do watch it, and we were sitting there watching it, man, and I had no clue. We've been talking with Eddie Kingston for about 2 weeks, guys. When I let you know that we got the interview with him,
Yeah.
and my first thought, honestly, and Eddie Kingston, let me tell you, he is very gracious. I won't go into all the details about how we booked the interviews and how we established that communication, but we had established a link of communication with him. He was talking to us every day about, hey, this is the bands I'm really into, you know, and then about like Tuesday, our communication went black. Like he wasn't responding, which is cool. I mean, you know, I know he's busy, and everybody in the world, Eddie Kingston is one of those ones that's universally respected, and everybody wants to talk to him, especially in light of the back and forth between he and Nick Aldis. But about Tuesday, the communication just went dark, and I wasn't getting any responses. And I would just send one or two. I'm not just carpet bombing him with emails or anything like that. Then he came out on Dynamite, and we were like, my first thought was like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. And my second thought was like, oh, he's not going to do our show tomorrow. But then that night, like I'm telling you, AEW went off. An hour later, he messaged and said, hey, I'm still in, guys. Dude, I'm going to do this, and I'm looking forward to it. I love what you guys do. And so that was my initial thought. Like you said, I love his talking with Arn Anderson. It was just surreal to me, and it was cool, man. Very much a fan of Eddie Kingston.
Absolutely. Can't say enough good things about Eddie. And if you guys have not checked it out, again, you got to go over to Piper's Notes and get through that thing. And for anybody who was concerned about the situation regarding Eddie Kingston and Nick Aldis, since they've been talking a little smack back and forth, Eddie Kingston does get prompted by Mr. Stinson at the end. The story is with that whole thing, and Eddie Kingston is quick to jump on and let Nick Aldis know what's up. Actually, I think he starts off with, Nick already knows what's up, but let me lay it down. And so we get a nice little promo there from Eddie Kingston on our champion, Mr. Aldis. So very cool.
Let me say something about just offline. Just, you know, when we do Piper's Notes, and everybody here, both willing, well, Gary's been on it, Will's coming on it, and many of you actually are going to be on it. We do. Can I take a second to just talk about Piper's Notes, Gary?
I wish you wouldn't. I don't know why I always have to be a smart ass with you, Rob. I'm so sorry. No, obviously, I've been gushing about Piper's Notes.
If you were on the schedule, I think someone's wrong. But Piper's Notes is this is our attempt to show that wrestling is a very high form of culture and entertainment, along the lines of any other form of performance sport or entertainment, like Broadway, baseball, whatever. It fits in that same genre. And so when we have our guest on, you'll find that we will touch on wrestling briefly, because to set the context, and you know, most of our viewers are wrestling fans, but we don't really talk about wrestling on there. But we get entertainers, we get rock stars. We've got Amanda Palmer from Dresden Dolls coming on later this week. We've had Will Control from Aiden. We've had everybody who's anybody in the NWA has been on virtually, and more are coming. We've got a lot. We've got like 9 on our schedule right now. But we also do super fans. So most of you who are in this chat right now, at some point, we will reach out to you to ask to come on our show, because it's about building community and building the fan, which includes both the talent and the fan base. And this Friday we're having Donna Wrestling, who is a saint. We love her. She is very gracious and just an amazing person, and loves wrestling, and is just rooted in the wrestling culture and has been NWA from day one. And then I think the week after that, we have Nikita, who, today is the anniversary of match 7 between he and Magnum TA. So it's somewhat timely. But anyway, I just wanted to plug that. That's kind of what that is. If you go on to Piper's Nest, for those of you in the chat who haven't seen it and expecting to get like a lot of bombshells and stuff, that's not going to happen. Every now and again, they'll drop some information, but that's not what we're about. Most of you are very intelligent. And they know what's going on. Wrestlers get hit with 100 interview requests, and they don't like them. They love Gary's now. Gary does it differently, and they speak universally positively about Gary and Will and the stuff that we do over here. But they'll go on these shoot interviews or these podcasts, and it's the same litany questions. We don't want to do that with them. We want to put them in a different environment and talk about them as people and how they bridge the gap between pro wrestling and their other cultural interests and how they got looped into that. So that's just a word of explanation. I just wanted to say that because I think the Eddie Kingston interview is so timely, and so we had such a great time with him, and he told us that he is not given an interview, and he is not giving an interview until things settle down with the AEW and the NWA and all that. And so this is the NWA podcast. That is the only official interview you're going to get from Eddie Kingston until things settle down a little bit. So pretty humbled and honored by that.
It's awesome. It's a great.
Who else but Sweetheart Piper could break down the walls of wild-eyed Eddie Kingston? It's but yeah, that's really cool stuff, and you get to see him like a softer side of Eddie almost. I mean, they're still talking Tupac and stuff like that, so and he's still talking about beating people up. I got a question, Rob. When you said that most of you are very intelligent people, could you be more specific on who is and who is not?
Well, Wrestling with the MMA is in the chat, so no, I'm kidding. No. If you get a chance, go on Standing Streamer's Twitch channel and listen to Will's interview. I gave an interview yesterday. It was terrible because I'm so long-winded and I just ran at the mouth. But Will's is outstanding. And Will goes on and on about how deep and loyal and invested and informed the NWA fan community is. Whether you're talking about Fort or Wrestling with the MMA or WWE Front Row or Dr. Red or any Mass Fan, RJ, any of you guys, Nation Show, any of those, Scooby, the NWA fan community is the most informed, most educated, most loyal, most connected fan community. Period. I mean, who else is going to hang out on a Sunday night and on a Tuesday night for 3+ hours just because we like each other's company? We're not doing this for us. We're not getting paid to do it. None of you are getting paid to do it. I'm sure you have other things you could do, but we just love each other, man, and we love what our mission is. So no, there's not. Most of us in here are intelligent, except for Wrestling with. No, I'm kidding. No, it's a great crowd.
Yeah, absolutely. We love all of you guys for hanging out with us. It's a lot of fun, and even like just having the regular people that we have that pop in here, it's just a blast to know that people love hanging out with us as much as we love hanging out with each other and you guys. It's really, really cool. Let's move this new stuff along. Enzo Amore, I got real redneck again. Enzo Amore has launched a wrestling school on OnlyFans. That is a thing that has happened. And
is that where we put our Manscaped videos on? Only
that's where you put your Manscaped videos on.
Yeah. I mean, I don't really have a lot to say about it. He tweeted it. And I'm Enzo. I'm looking forward to getting to know all my real fans right here on OnlyFans. Thank you so much for all the support. I guarantee this pro wrestling tutorial series, You Can't Teach That Incorporated, will be a truly eye-opening experience for any aspiring pro wrestler. You'll truly learn things that can't be taught. Thanks for allowing me the chance to give back. Enjoy. And that's Amore. So thoughts, fellas, on Enzo Amore? Like, I don't know. I assume it's just promo school. I don't know what else you could really do there.
Couple things just from a marketing and branding standpoint here. If you're going to teach something, your tagline probably shouldn't be "you can't teach that," because that seems counterintuitive. So that was the first thing I noticed, because my brain thinks like a marketer. But yeah, I don't know if it's going to be promos or if he's going to. I don't know how you teach physical professional wrestling through video. I don't know, but it's interesting to say the least. So.
Well, I will say that Enzo, for those of you who have been following the NWA podcast in the last 48 hours and saw that we dropped the episode 1 of season 2 of AWF Viral, that stands for American Wrestling Federation. Enzo made his AWF debut on July the 11th, and that is covered in that episode. So if you are interested, go to the podcast, look at that episode. And so we had a chance to do a little bit of work with Enzo here very, very recently.
Yeah, absolutely. Next bit of news that we've got here is courtesy of Wade Keller at the PW Torch. I just wanted to mention this. Impact. We don't get to talk about them very often, but on Tuesday this week drew 163,000 viewers, up from 106,000 the week before and 135,000 the week before that. The average since March 24th has been 145,000. So it appears the buzz generated from the Slammiversary pay-per-view on Saturday night, with the arrival of Heath Slater, Luke Gallows, Carl Anderson, and the return of EC3, the Motor City Machine Guns, and Eric Young, have helped add some viewers to Impact. Impact drew more viewers on May 12th, and 9 of the first 10 weeks of the year drew more than 163,000. The empty arena setting has correlated to drops in viewership in the single-digit percentages compared to projections based on the seasonal ebb and flow of viewership annually. But basically, Impact is growing right now. They're showing a pretty large increase in viewership, especially coming out of Slammiversary. Now, I'm wondering about that myself, because I don't know about you guys, but I saw a lot of buzz for Impact coming out of Slammiversary. I was this close. I was this close to getting Slammiversary because I was curious, like, who was going to show up. I didn't end up getting the pay-per-view, but I was on top of the news, like, on who debuted. So it had my attention. And I know some of the folks in our NWA Discord that we've got going on right now. By the way, if you guys aren't in that, you should definitely join. There's a link in the bio. But a lot of people in there were doing like watch-alongs for Impact Wrestling this past week after Slammiversary. So I guess just thoughts there, guys. You think this is just luck of the draw, or they've actually worked hard and are generating attention?
Well, I think it's good all around. I mean, I'll admit I watched the first probably 30 to 45 minutes. We went live that night. That was our last stream. So I didn't watch all of it, but yeah, I mean, I was curious, and I had actually never watched Impact live before. And I think it was pre-taped. It wasn't actually live, maybe, but I watched it on Twitch because I don't have the cable channel that it comes on. But I mean, when I hear stories like this, I mean, first of all, one of the things I've covered a lot on Hey It's Will Daily is just how terrible the Black Wednesday was when all those WWE wrestlers were released. And one of the things I've said over and over was that it'll be better when we start seeing these guys land gigs and start appearing more, and that's what's happening. So for me, it's a positive to see these guys back on TV, back doing something that they're great at, and being used, their talent being utilized. And we say it all the time. Rob says it all the time. The wrestling pie is big enough for everyone, right? I mean, there's different strokes for different folks, and we happen to be NWA first faithful, but that doesn't mean there's not room for other promotions. And I watched it, and I actually really enjoyed it. Willie Mack was on there in a really great match, and it was good to see him again. and it was great wrestling. You know, obviously different production than what we're used to with Power and stuff like that, but it's a different promotion, and I think they're doing a great job, and I'm happy for them, and you know, hope it continues to grow.
Yeah, 100%. I think that when Impact does well, pro wrestling does well. It's yeah, I consider them somewhat related to the NWA, and NWA is a meta promotion, so they all are, but especially Impact and like Ring of Honor and places like that. So everything Will said, 100% agree with.
Yeah, and just to be clear, I mean, these numbers don't put it anywhere near NXT or AEW right now or anything like that. We're not saying that. It's just that there is a steady increase right now going on with them. And so it would be interesting to see if they could carve out their own niche in the wrestling world as it is. Now, one of the things that's going to test that coming up that we're starting to see that starts to make you worry if you do that sort of thing for WWE, is that live sports are starting to come back, or will be coming back over the next little bit. Baseball has obviously made its appearance now, and supposedly the NFL will start popping up. Soccer's around, and so we're going to start seeing if any of that starts cutting into pro wrestling, because they've had like a pretty open range, like no competition really, except maybe UFC on Saturday nights or something. But anyway, just going to be interesting to see what happens from here.
Yeah, I'm hoping it'll be good. And I mean, I'm gonna continue to tune in to Impact just to see what's going on, and maybe I'll catch a storyline and it'll hook me in. You know, we don't have any NWA wrestling right now, so I'm not closed off to checking it out and getting into it.
Well, I'm going to jump into one more news item that I've got here, unless you guys have something else. This will be the last thing we talked about in the news portion before we jump into Great American Bash 1986. I'm not happy to share this with you. I'm not even happy that I'm clicking on this video, but I can't find where the words are that I can just read them to you. So I'm going to play this if you guys are down with hearing this. There's not really much video to it exactly, so if I get spotty, as long as you can hear it, that's the important part. But to preface the next portion of this, I need about 5 minutes of your time here to listen to a little something that happened on Something to Wrestle with Bruce Prichard and Conrad Thompson the other day. So I'm going to do that.
Rob, cover your ears.
Oh, don't do it, Gary. Don't say you're not doing it.
Do it, buddy.
Son of a...
Speaking of professional and easy to work with, they bring back Magnus, who we now know is Nick Aldis, the NWA World Champion, over on the Power program on YouTube. He was a TNA staple for a long, long time. His wife is still under WWE contract, but it doesn't feel like, for whatever reason, he really got much of a shake with WWE. Why do you think that is? I mean, obviously he's, carved his own path here and doing very well as the NWA World Champion, but I think a lot of people look at that guy and say he could be on WWE. What's missing for him in the relationship with WWE?
I don't know what is missing with the relationship with him and WWE. I can tell you what is missing in the relationship with him and just about everybody else is, I think that and no matter what you want to say, he's got a great look.
Yeah.
He can work.
Mm-hmm.
Then there's just something that he's missing, and that doesn't have a connection to take him to the next level. There's times, unfortunately, where I feel that he was playing a part instead of being the part. He wasn't being Magnus. He was just playing Magnus and what he thought Magnus should be. And there wasn't a lot of, it wasn't genuine. Probably the biggest critique I can give there.
You've said this a lot through the years that so-and-so, he was just playing wrestler. Tell me, can you go a little deeper on on how to differentiate the two when a guy is that and when he's playing that. I mean, I understand what the words mean in general, but can you give us examples?
Yeah, Steve Austin was Steve Austin. Steve Austin drank beer. Steve Austin was a loudmouth and pretty much a redneck. He turned the volume up, but you didn't have to dig for that character.
Part of what you were saying there cut out. You've got a little tricky internet today, but we're going to power through. Give me the Steve Austin example again.
No, the Steve Austin is a loudmouth, redneck, beer drinking Hellraiser. That's who he is. The volume's turned up, yes, but there's not a departure from the human being in the character. Playing wrestler, I think, is, I'll use John Layfield as an example for two different things, because John was playing wrestler when he was Justin Hawk, whatever the hell he was. And then later on as the Blackjacks, he was playing a Blackjack. John he came into his own in the APA because he got to play himself. And then it later on evolved into JBL. And again, that's just who he is. Volume turned up. So he went through both. He went through playing wrestler to becoming a character that was true to him. And Magnus was playing Magnus. Nick Aldis, I don't know who he is. He's a nice guy, a little insecure, and came over from whatever British gladiators to become Magnus because Dixie liked his look. But who's Magnus? And I don't know that he ever just embraced actually being whoever that character was. I could be Brother Love.
Have you seen any of his work as Nick Aldis, as the NWA champ?
Yeah. He's trying to be what he thinks the NWA champion should be.
I see. Let's
Harley Race, just Harley Race.
Right.
He didn't have to put on airs. Dusty Rhodes was Dusty Rhodes. He didn't have to put on airs. Ric Flair is Ric Flair. You going to tell me there's ever a minute of the day that you don't believe that Ric Flair is Ric Flair?
Well, he believes it.
That's right. Maybe too much.
Well, that's debatable. Let's talk about that for a minute, though. I was ready to move on, but since you doubled down, I do want to circle back. I mean, if somebody brings in the character Magnus and says, hey, you're going to be Magnus, he has to try to figure out what they want, right? I mean, it's not like he can just go be himself.
Well, I think whoever the hell came up with that gimmick should have figured out what the hell they wanted and known instead of just be Magnus.
Right. Yeah, it just feels
I don't know if that ever happened either.
Yeah, and it may not have, and that may explain why, he's out here doing his best to give what his quote unquote bosses, the people who hired him, the people who are paying him, hey, if this is what you want, I'll try to give you that. But I don't know, it feels a little chicken and the egg when we compare old school examples and we're talking about guys from the 70s and 80s, when realistically the way wrestling is produced has changed so much now that might be a little easier than it sounds. I mean, a little harder than it sounds.
Yes and no. And again, you have to find the character. You've got to believe it. You've got to live it and become that. It's very similar to Jim Carrey being Andy Kaufman while he was filming that movie. And you feel that if you can get lost in a guy in a movie and believe that that's actually them in a biopic, then they've done their job. They believe. Jim Carrey became Andy Kaufman in that movie, and he stopped being Jim Carrey.
Hey, it's Conrad Thompson. Thanks for checking out the pod.
All right. Savewithconrad.com, just to give them the proper credit. So Bruce Prichard says that Nick Aldis lacks, quote unquote, it. And he's not very authentic, sounds like is what he's trying to say here. And he's just putting on airs, I guess. I see one part of my screen steaming up already. So do we go to Will first to try to slowly lead into this? Let's so we gotta hear from Rob eventually.
Let's rip off the Band-Aid slowly. First of all, in my opinion, everyone is entitled to their own opinion. I believe opinions should be weighed and not counted, so you always have to consider the source. This is nothing against Bruce Prichard. I don't typically listen to him. For me, he's not a source of anything that has shaped my wrestling viewpoint or anything like that. He's not a go-to person for me. Again, not discounting anything he's done or what he contributes or his point of view. I think for most of that interview, the portion that we just listened to, I was rationalizing a little bit, saying, okay, he's talking about Magnus. I'm not super familiar with that character, so maybe he's spot on. But then when they crossed the line and we're talking about Nick Aldis now as NWA champion, I don't, and somebody mentioned this in the chat, I don't consider Bruce Prichard an authority on modern day NWA. I don't really know if he's watched it, if he has time to, or if he's really spent any time looking into it to formulate a real opinion. And obviously I disagree wholeheartedly with his assessment. And I've been a wrestling fan my whole life. And I know what I'm talking about, much like you two guys and everybody in the chat right now, as smart wrestling fans. And I think Bruce Prichard's coming from a completely different viewpoint from that WWE mindset. And yeah, I can see how from a WWE mindset that doesn't jive well, because Nick Aldis isn't a cartoon character. And that's not me making a generalization about WWE, but I don't think he gets it. That's my kind of judgment of Bruce Prichard. I don't think he gets it. And for that reason, his opinion's not going to carry a lot of weight with me.
Okay, Gary, give me 60 seconds. And if I'm still talking at 67, give me 30 more seconds and then cut me off. Okay. First of all, right, just because a person has been a worker or has worked in a promotion in some executive role does not make them authority on everything related to wrestling. There are lots of freaking idiots out there. And Bruce Prichard, it's not like what a hypocrite. You want to talk about characters and being fake? Like, oh, you walk around like brother love all the time? Like you came up with that junk and that's how you live your life? Let me tell you something. Nick Aldis didn't invent Magnus, and he did it to the freaking nines. He killed that character. But what you see in the NWA with Nick Aldis is real authenticity. It's not a fake thing. It's not a show. It's real. And you don't take my word for it. You don't have to. I'm nobody. I'm just a freaking mark like anybody else is. Listen to freaking Eric Bischoff. Listen to DDP. Listen to Harley Race. Listen to Dory Funk, who say that everything that Nick Aldis touches is important and that he's the real champion. So, you know what? Bruce Prichard, kiss my ass, dude.
Well said.
I'll just, yeah, I mean, I'll be honest with you. That was more gentle of a reaming than I expected. So good for you, Rob. I appreciate your restraint. I'll tell you what I don't think has it. WWE, SmackDown, or Raw right now.
Correct.
Considering they're sporting their lowest ratings of all time. So just throwing that out there.
Again, you got to consider the source. I mean, if this dude was creating a bang up wrestling show that was blowing it out of the water with characters that embody what he's talking about, well, then maybe that would carry weight, but he's not. So it doesn't really mean much to me. I hate that it's out there. I'm not going to presume.
Yeah, I hate that it's out there because it's. I'll tell you what. Like I'm also going to try not to go on a rant here, and I've gone on my Aldis rants in the past. But the thing is that, I mean, it's presumed to know everything about Bruce Prichard or what he's seen and what he hasn't, and how drunk it sounded like he was or not. I don't know, but I will say that going on a platform like his and doing that, I mean, that's some definite trash talking. And it doesn't sound like you're just talking about the character Magnus. It sounds like you're talking about the man himself. And that's pretty low, considering what Nick Aldis has done. It sounds like he hasn't actually seen any of the NWA stuff. That's what I have to assume, because I don't know how you watched anything that's happened, especially over the last like year or two with the NWA and you don't think that Nick Aldis is a worthy champion and has quote unquote it.
Or again, if he has seen it, he just doesn't get it. He's not the target audience. He's not the same kind of wrestling fan that we are. And, that is what it is. Again, like the biggest disappointment to me about all this is that it's out there and now people are going to jump on it without even knowing just because he said it. That's the problem I have with it.
Well, and that it damages a brand. Like, I mean, these people are out here busting their ass and trying to earn a paycheck and like trying to make themselves mean something to the world of professional wrestling. Now, it's one thing to disagree with booking. It's one thing to, to like just hate a storyline, like say you booked a show where the whole match stipulation is one guy's going to rip another dude's eyeball out. Like say, it's easy to have a problem with that and how stupid that is. But when you're attacking a person directly, like you're attacking an individual, like the human who is the person you're seeing on that screen, that's a whole different story. And that's what it sounds like he's doing here. That's my biggest problem with it, because now not only are you burying Nick Aldis, you're burying the brand, you're burying everybody it feels like you're, I don't know, maybe I even take that too personally, but it just,
I mean, I'm like, he's so unimportant that you're sitting there talking about him, I mean, he ate up like 7 or 8 minutes of that freaking show, man, and again, I don't know anything, man. I don't have any special source of knowledge, or I just love wrestling and I've been watching it forever. I don't have any particular insight, but a lot of people who have insight will tell you that the reason Nick Aldis is putting in his best body of work ever in his career right now, because he is who he is. He's finally getting to be real. And who can dispute that? If you dispute that, and even guys like in the chat, like my friend Wrestling with the MMA, we're good friends, man. He gives me hell. We roast each other. But even he in the foursome will tell you that whether you like what's going on in the ring with the storytelling, Nick Aldis is the real world champion. He does it better than anybody else. And so for me, for his credibility, like boom, no credibility. He completely dropped it. It's what you said, Gary. You're not really watching. You're just trying to sound informed.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, one thing I can tell you guys for certain, if you're not already aware, is that I have it on good authority that Nick Aldis has also heard these comments himself. And I can now confirm for certain he will be live on Busted Open Radio tomorrow morning at 10 Eastern, 9 Central. And you can bet that he will have something to say about this. So, I know we got a lot of Busted Open Radio fans. So expect that Mr. Aldis will not let that lie. I am sure. I'm sure that Busted Open is having Nick Aldis on because they also expect that Nick Aldis will not want to let that lie, and so they want the scoop. And so props to them for bringing him on. They've all heard it now. And so make sure you're tuned in to Busted Open tomorrow, because I imagine we're going to hear something about this again. That out of the way, and we can talk more about this in the after show if we want to, or whatever you guys want to talk about. I do have one other piece of news I have to throw in really, really quickly. You guys wanted some NWA news, some movement on the NWA. I just received an exclusive as we're talking right now that I think is going to turn Rob Stinson's mood around just a little bit. I can confirm 100% that on Friday, September the 18th, 2020, on Title Match Wrestling Network, or live if you go to missionprowrestling.net, Hell Hath No Fury will be taking place, and it will be headlined by an NWA World Women's Championship match. Thunder Rosa will be defending that title against the American Kaiju, Lindsay Snow.
There it
Confirmed.
There it is.
Oh, snap.
So we're going to get NWA NWA Women's Championship match, and two badass ladies are about to go at it on September 18th. So I'm going to be super excited about that.
Are they having audience members there? Are they selling in-person tickets or what?
It says they're selling tickets. I haven't like confirmed anything for sure, but it says you can buy your tickets at missionprowrestling.net.
I think they are, Rob, because I saw a tweet earlier that said masks will be required. So
okay, so
mask up and get there, bud.
Well,
I've seen the artwork. I was told I could not post it yet, but I was told that it would be okay to announce it here to all of you people on the show right now, that is a confirmed championship match that we'll be taking. So, and yes, Brian Cervantes in the chat is confirming, yes, tickets are available for this show. So you guys get excited. That's going to be awesome. And
I have 6 vacation days to spend or lose. So there they go. Boom.
All right.
Oh, Rob's already all over this.
I'm literally looking up Expedia right now. I really am, man. Normally my wife does that for me because I usually make a bad deal and she's way smarter than I am. But
we can at least get through the rest of this show, Rob. I mean, I'm sure that maybe like even if it's sold out right this second because of our show announcing that, I'm sure that the Rosas would probably help you out if you were really gonna fly down there and try to catch that. I'm sure they'd be generous to you.
I'm going to be there. If it's happening, I'm going to be there.
Well, we'll definitely be covering it either way. So I'm stoked.
Yeah, definitely. We're gonna treat this like an NWA show. Absolutely. We love Brian and Thunder Rosa, and we love what they're doing, and we're super happy to be in this moment in time to see this all women's promotion growing up. So we want to celebrate Mission Pro Wrestling for sure. All right. Unless you guys have any other breaking news items, we went way over Will's schedule. I feel like he's going to strangle us all in the post-production meeting.
It was a pipe dream to have a schedule. We'll try again.
Yeah. I mean, for what it's worth, I mean, it was a very newsworthy edition of the show, which has not been the case lately. It's been hard to run across news that we feel like we could actually just go in on regarding the NWA and everything. So this has been good. But we got it here. A building feud between Nick Aldis and Bruce Prichard, an NWA Women's Championship match confirmed. Just lots of stuff. A Carnyland meet up by a Zoom. That's good stuff. But now it's time to talk about one of the great pay-per-views in wrestling history. And we're going to take you guys all the way, if we're ready to go, we're going to take you all the way back to 1986. That was it. That was my time machine.
Yeah, you got to do the Wayne's World. There you go.
Oh, man. So 1986 might have been one of the hottest years in pro wrestling history. You may not see that from the outside looking in. However, a lot of promotions at this time, they're tripping over themselves. I think like Super Clash 3 was around this time, and they're just trying to find some ways to stay relevant. Because if you keep in mind, like right before this, a year before this, in 85, what was it? March 31st, 1985, WrestleMania had just happened. So now WWF is blowing up, and they've got celebrities, they've got hot stuff going on, and so other promotions are trying to make themselves relevant again. And WrestleMania was hugely successful. That event alone has drawn over 19,121 people, seen by over a million more on closed circuit TV. In light of this, that's a lot to keep up with. WWE or F was showing up on television all over everywhere. But one promotion that was not struggling as much, that had a specific territory and kept with it, was Jim Crockett Promotions. These guys were on fire. And during this time, they were having 1986 would actually end up being their best year yet. They had a territory stretching all the way from Maryland down through the Carolinas and Georgia, several other states. And for them, actually this time, what is this? 30, what is it? 96, 2016, 34. Yeah, I was trying to like figure it up in my head. 34 years ago on this day, marked a time when they were in the middle of one of their biggest events of all time. The previous year, PWI and the NWA had put on a co-branded show named by Dusty Rhodes. It was called The Great American Bash, and it was a huge success. I was listening to several people talk about the Great American Bash, and Jim Cornette specifically, I remember, was saying that like this was the first glimpse that Dusty had. Dusty had the book at this time. He was booking all of the stuff, and he had put a lot of pieces in place. And Great American Bash in 1980, first moment where he and Crockett had finally like hit that like, you've got this. This is working. Like we're really getting somewhere. So moving along into 1986, you had Starrcade 86, which was the Night of the Skywalkers. And in that show in particular, that was the first moment that they, the way Cornette describes it, that he realized not only do we have it, we can go huge. Like we are drawing a lot of money and we are on fire right now. Like this is going to be big. So looking to capitalize on all of this, Rhodes and Crockett came up with the idea that the NWA, they had already been working on it, but would now start to build some of the hottest feuds in pro wrestling history. If they had anything going for them, it was that they had some of the best storylines that there were out there. And they were going to use this to take the whole summer and start a brand new giant tour to capitalize on this thing. And they would call it the Great American Bash. This was, of course, the second ever Great American Bash, but now it was going to be like a huge tour. And so that was it. So I don't know about you guys, but I mean, Rob, I'm sure this was, I think you were like 2 around this time in 86. So you probably know this well, but I did not know before we jumped into this show that this Great American Bash, like when we decided on it, I didn't know right away. This was not a one show thing. This was like a series of shows that ran the entire summer from like July to like the beginning of August. Do you have any fond memories of this time period?
Yep. 13 shows in 30 days. I actually got to attend a show. And I think Ricky Morton and Ric Flair wrestled in the main event of that particular show. But amazing. And just so you know, this is one of the like inspirations behind the promotion of the Aldis Crusade. This concept of, hey, I'm going to defend this title multiple times in so many days. I think Nick Aldis did it in 60 days and double the defenses. But same gist. So yes, and you're absolutely right. This is the NWA at its high water mark. I know Jay Cal doesn't like us talking about wilderness years, and we can talk about that on another podcast, but this is the anti-wilderness period. This is it at the pinnacle of its commercial success. And it was 13 times in 30 days. And I know, I think James Lawrence said he'd been to the Philly show. And if you've been to one, you know, man, in those days, it was fire. The audience was just fluid with emotion.
Yeah, the looking back on it, I was looking at some numbers from around this time, and this was arguably, I think, based on the numbers, not arguably even, this was the Crockett's best year in pro wrestling. They earned a gross of $21 million for that year, and that in today's money, they were estimating would be around $50 million. So they were raking in the cash. In fact, if you go back and listen to Cornette on his podcast, does a deep dive into the numbers of things during this time. And he talks about a random day in the year on February 2nd, 1986, where on that day, professional wrestling in general drew 70,000 people all over the country paid into live events. Now, 3 of those events were Crockett events. They had like 12,000 in Hamilton, Ontario, headlined by Flair and Dusty versus the Road Warriors. 12K in Charlotte with Rock and Roll versus the Midnight Express. And then 7K at the Omni right after that, where everybody came together for a show they did called Superstars on the Superstation, which would be the point, because at this high watermark, as you put it, the Superstars on the Superstation would be kind of the beginning of what would lead into the Great American Bash Tour. This was kind of the setup for all of the shows that were going on in this event. You had things like Dusty Rhodes really getting into his feud here with the Four Horsemen, and he battled Tully Blanchard at this show, and they went to a draw due to interference, and he was having an issue with Ric Flair. Obviously, Ric Flair would go on in the main event of this particular show to beat Ron Garvin to win back the NWA World's Heavyweight Championship, and so that would kind of build on that feud. You had the Magnum TA and Nikita Koloff stuff going on, and just several different things that like built to matches that were going to be paid off, or like significant parts of the feuds would happen during the Great American Bash Tour.
Yeah, and here's one thing to keep in mind
ahead.
too.
Yes,
when you talk about all those title defenses, it's not like it is now. So I went to a SmackDown house show like 2 years ago, and I saw Charlotte versus Asuka, and it was a great match. But you know, if you follow the house show circuit and cards, that same match happened like every night. So they were just replaying the same matches over and over. Ric Flair defended his title during this tour against somebody different just about every night. So he defended against Ricky Morton, as Rob, you just mentioned. He defended against Hawk and Animal separately, the Road Warriors, Ron Garvin, Nikita Koloff, Magnum TA, Dusty, obviously, that we're going to talk about, Wahoo McDaniel. Like it was a different person each event. So it wasn't like, when we think about that now, like, oh, you know, similar, like you said, Rob, to the Aldis Crusade. I mean, it was a different person every match. It wasn't this like what we're used to in the mainstream house show circuit, where it's like they're going to replay the same match over and over just for different crowds because it's not on TV. This was not like that. This was, I mean, Ric Flair was defending that title against formidable opponents night after night. I mean, sometimes with only one night or no night break in between. So just to put that into perspective of what these guys were doing from a performance and just a wrestling level.
And when you look at these cards, this is something I think that the modern iteration of the NWA does so well. If you look at one of the Bash 86 cards, and I'll just use the standard packaged one, that's basically a compilation of highlights. When you would get the VHS version or the DVD or the digital version of Bash 86, it's basically a compilation of highlights from the 13 shows. But when you look at that, it's like watching an NWA show. The strength of the storytelling on the card is important from top to bottom. Like when you're talking about Jimmy Valiant and his legendary feud with number one Paul Jones in the Army. As a fan in those days, being just a young, just being 10 years old, 11 years old, like that had a lot of meaning to me as a kid. I was in tune with that more than I was with just about anything else, even though titles weren't on the line. Of course, the Rock and Roll Express were out there, Pinnacle, the Road Warriors, Magnum and Nikita. The whole card, even when like Denny Brown, or Sam Houston, who were in the junior heavyweight title picture at the time, even that had a lot of meaning. And I think the NWA, some of their brilliance has to do with building very meaningful storylines throughout the card. It's not always, obviously everything is about the belts. You want to get belts, but there's important content and storytelling that doesn't just involve the belts, and they nailed it with this.
Yeah, that's a really great point. And now, obviously, like we're talking about, there were several, more than several. One of the things that, like, I saw a lot of wrestlers talking about is that Ric Flair got people amped up about this situation. Now, these guys were making, by the way, money was awesome for the wrestlers during this time, at least for most of them. And so you would get a lot based on the way I understand it is like a lot of the guys would share the house. So Ric Flair like teased everyone during this time. It got everybody amped up to perform to their fullest during this tour, because he would tell them, like, there are 14 shows for the Great American Bash. This is 14 Starcades that are going to happen right now in July. Like, it's going to be huge. So everybody wanted to be on top of their game, and they wanted to deliver this on this. And I just thought that was kind of interesting that he kind of had to pump them along. But they did. I mean, like Will said, this wasn't just like some standard house show stuff. I mean, they were having unique matches and going all in on these matches. And you'll see, I mean, we're going to focus on, I keep meaning to say this week, we're going to focus more on the July 26th show from the Great American Bash. That's what we're celebrating the anniversary of today. But we can, talk a little bit about the others as we want to. I mean, the main thing, I mean, if you're looking at the WWE network, the only ones you can actually watch on the network officially are July 5th and July 26th. So that's kind of interesting. Those are available in their hidden gem stuff. But anyway, I say all that to say they during the promotion of the Great American Bash, realized what the WWF was doing as far as star power and using the celebrities and that kind of thing. Now, this is going to obviously have a little bit more of a Southern tinge to it because of the territories we're talking about. But during this time, I mean, in the Superstars on the Superstation show, Dusty Rhodes had a sit-down interview with Tony Schiavone that also had Willie Nelson hanging out with him. Willie Nelson actually performed on several of the shows, like leading into the events. They also had guys like George Jones there and Waylon Jennings. So definitely more of a country style thing, but that makes a lot of sense considering the audience. But they were pulling in star power. This Great American Bash tour was meant to be, well, like Ric Flair said, like 14 Starcades. It was meant to be a huge deal. These are all WrestleManias in their own right, So that part of it I thought was really interesting. It's definitely not just a house show type thing. And the feuds that are built up in this thing are amazing. Like you guys were talking about. I mean, for me alone, just the Magnum TA Nikita Koloff stuff was just outstanding. I mean, you've got a best of 7 series going on for the U.S. title. And that alone, I think, drew people in because, I mean, I guess we could get more into it later, but Magnum TA at this time, people that don't realize, as you go back and look at Magnum TA, he was the hot baby face, like the guy like coming up, who was getting ready to take over the world at this time. And basically, I assume, Rob, it probably felt a lot like how Sting felt during the Great American Bash the last time we watched one. It was probably like he was kind of sort of working his way into that position a little bit, it felt like.
Yeah, I mean, just for those who weren't familiar with the Crockett era so much, if you're watching the NWA today, you get the feel of like somebody like an Eddie Kingston or somebody like an Eli Drake. It's got that sort, or a Trevor Murdoch, man. These guys are like very, very popular babies that can, I hate to say it, use that term loosely, but it had that same sort of feel. Magnum TA was the heir apparent. I mean, he was the one that, in those days, the U.S. Championship was considered the number one contender belt. You had a national title and a TV title. Interestingly, the TV title was actually considered a world's championship in those days. They called it the World's Television Championship. But the U.S. title was considered the next most important belt. And Magnum TA was, by all accounts, and this is no secret, for everybody knows this, he was the one that was the designated heir to Ric Flair.
Yeah, absolutely. So, just to run through it, I mean, you had the matchups like the July 5th show. That's the other big one you'll hear about. Like I said, that's on the WWE network, which had matches like Robert Gibson versus Black Bart. You had Ole and Arn Anderson versus Sam Houston, Nelson Royal. You had a bunkhouse match between Manny Fernandez and Baron von Raschke. An Indian strap match on that show with Wahoo McDaniel and Jimmy Garvin. Ron Garvin versus Tully Blanchard. The Road Warriors versus the Koloffs. Jimmy Valiant versus Shaska Watley. Dusty Rhodes, Magnum TA, and Baby Doll versus the Midnight Express. And Ric Flair versus Ricky Morton was the main event for that one for the NWA World Heavyweight Champion. How about Ric Flair going all the way back to 1986, defending against Ricky Morton. And just to think that Ricky Morton in 2019 was still fighting for the NWA World's Heavyweight Championship.
Yeah. And Gary, and again, I've only heard this. I've heard Ricky say this before in a shoot interview or something, but it's not like Ricky Morton was just some upstart. They had a very, very intense feud. I mean, and guys like Arn Anderson will talk about it. You want to talk about like upsetting a crowd? Try beating up Ricky Morton in a live audience. They attacked Ricky Morton and almost didn't get out of the arena. The fans almost rioted. Ricky Morton was over like Rover, man. He was freaking like, he was over like Tommy Rich was in the early 80s. I mean, he was the biggest, most popular guy. And there was legitimate, serious talk, I'm told, that they were going to put the belt on Ricky Morton, for a transitional reign. But Ricky didn't want to do it because that would have implications for he and Robert. And I've heard Ricky say that before. I can't pinpoint it, but I think probably some of you in the chat may have heard the same thing, and Gary, you probably have. But this was not just a little sideshow. Ricky Morton was very much in the title discussion at the time.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know, Robert Gibson had a match during one of these shows with him too, and I heard nothing but good things about that. That Robert Gibson was an excellent wrestler who never got as much credit because he's in there next to Ricky Morton, who can sell like nobody's business and is always like the focal point of the team for the most part. But Flair did defend against Robert Gibson in one of those matches, and just thought that was kind of interesting. And I had a list.
Hawk and Animal both getting a shot, you know, individually.
Yeah, that's absolutely. That's all.
That's the thing, man, that those guys were so versatile. We're not used to this, again, not to keep harping on this then versus now thing, but what we don't realize was just the versatility of these guys and their talent back then. They could wrestle a phenomenal tag team match one night and then turn around a night or two nights later and wrestle in a world title match and give a stellar performance in that. You know, how often do we see that nowadays? It's surreal.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. If I could just take a quick moment to break here real quick, something I'm just proud of us guys together. As Front Row said, we broke something and it wasn't Stinson's spirit this time. Nick Aldis has just tweeted out directly to Bruce Prichard saying, "Hi, Bruce Prichard. Your ignorant comments about me had me at an all-time low, kind of like your Raw ratings. However, there are a few Hall of Famers that seem to have a different opinion, some of which are featured below." And he has a video that he's posting along with this. And he says, "P.S. I will be live on Busted Open Radio tomorrow morning." So there you go. So
let
just
him know. Go get him.
You heard it here first, and yeah, get him, champ. Absolutely.
It's like it's like we can, you know, like you got wrestling with the MMA in there. We let our family members, we let them talk trash, but we don't let anybody else. It's like my brother. My brother as a kid, I can mess with my brother, but nobody else can. You mess with our champion, like him or not, he's our champion. He's the real world's champion. You cross the freaking line, dude. So I hope Nick Aldis makes this Joker famous tomorrow in a way that Bruce Prichard has never been famous.
Woof. Oh, love seeing Rob get all fired up. All right, so let's move into the actual card, I guess, unless there's any other stuff you want to some of the matches. I'm sure that Rob probably has some good insight into what these matches were all about. Namely, jumping right into we're talking about again July 26, 1986. That was out of Greensboro, North Carolina, the Greensboro Coliseum, a hot wrestling town for sure. And this is going to be headlined by the Dusty Rhodes versus Ric Flair NWA World's Heavyweight Championship match. And let's see here. The very first match on this event. One thing I thought was interesting, by the way, about this event that you may not be prepared for if you haven't watched it yet on the WWE Network is this seems like footage that's almost like discovered. I don't want to say discovered footage, but the fact that all the shows aren't there lets you know, I guess it's not as easy to come by. So I think during the time, like you could only get like this particular show and like on VHS or something. It was like one of the only ones they put out on VHS. And, but there's no commentary on this thing, which I thought was really interesting. So you're watching a show, I mean, with some good camera angles and everything, that's not the issue, but it's kind of weird because you get all the noises from the ring. Did that put anybody else off? Because it did me for a little bit.
It actually didn't put me off. It did the opposite. I actually loved it. I was sitting here, you know, one of my biggest beefs with modern wrestling, not Joe Galley and Stu Bennett, they're excluded from what I'm about to say, but one of my biggest beefs is the commentary and the fact that, so the more I watched this show, and yes, I did realize at first the huge void that there was no commentary. I would have loved to hear a Shivani or JR or somebody like that, those classic voices, but like it enabled me to enjoy the wrestling show like I was there. And I don't think we realize how different the experience can be when there is no commentary, but you can still hear the crowd pops and you can still, so it's not watching a show on mute. It's actually just getting the experience like you're there. And you could really feel, so instead of listening to commentary, I was listening to the crowd response. I was listening to the guys in the ring, you know, work on each other. And that was such a unique experience for me that I haven't had since last time I was at a live wrestling show. And I actually really enjoyed it. So you asked, did it put me off? No, the opposite. It actually like pulled me in a little further. And by the time I got through, you know, halfway through this opening bout with Steve Regal and Sam Houston, I was like, this is super cool, and just thoroughly enjoyed the rest of the show because of that.
Yeah, I mean, I get at the time, I guess I've always known that version of this event. That's the one that I grew up on. So you know, maybe if I were around today, I might have a different response. So I'm probably not as objective as I could be on this, but it doesn't, I never really thought about that until you just mentioned it, Gary. So, you know, it didn't put me off or anything.
Yeah. And when I say put me off, I wasn't like disgusted with it or anything like that. I just, It was kind of weird at first. Like I was like, especially because one of the things that I noticed that really stood out on it is, I'm used to like ring sounds, I think, but you could even hear like the rattle of the cables for like the ropes, you know, like that was kind of interesting to me. Just like they would hit those ropes and you get that like clackety, clackety, clackety sound. It was just kind of interesting. Like you got a lot of the sound effects. It also is really cool to see how these guys work the crowd though, too, because there is a lot of crowd work going on in these matches and some people are just masters at it. And, I mean, right off the top of my head, I'm thinking of the stuff we're going to see from Ric Flair and like Jim Cornette and those guys. Like they just own that crowd, just like have them eating out of the palm of their hand. And it's pretty impressive. And you get to really experience that with no commentary over it. So I didn't know much about these guys. And Rob, I don't know if you have anything you want to add about these two, but Steve Regal defeated Sam Houston in the opening matchup here. And basically it's just, he pins him with his foot up on the ropes, just like classic heel stuff. It's obviously like the opening match. They're getting people fired up and rowdy, but I will say another part that blew me away is, my God, that crowd was into it. Like this is the opening match and that crowd was lit that whole time. And they were into it, like just behind Sam Houston the entire time. And just pissed off when Steve Regal gets the roll up and puts his legs up on the ropes. And they're behind it when Houston like goads him back into the ring to get into a fist fight. And they have a fist fight and like Houston's getting the better of him until Regal rolls out and escapes. But Regal does get the win here. Any thoughts on this one, guys, or any backstory you can give us, Rob?
Yeah, this is a gem of a match. These are two really important guys, and at the time they were embroiled over a championship belt that's not really been active for a while. I don't know if Jay Cow's in the chat or not, but he can tell you about this too. The Junior Heavyweight Championship is one of the most venerated titles. It is a world's championship. It was owned, operated, dominated by a guy named Nelson Royal for many years, and Denny Brown was in that discussion along with Sam Houston and whatnot. But Steve Regal and Denny, they wrestled for this belt several times. It's like It's like every time they would even do it on Saturday, on the Saturday shows and stuff. And here we have Sam Houston entering that junior heavyweight title picture, and I think he even held the belt up once or twice. This is, by the way, the husband of Baby Doll, Sam Houston is. And Steve Regal, an interesting little curious feature is Steve Regal is considered one of those unofficial members of the Freebirds. Jimmy Garvin was a legit full-blooded member, if anyone has any doubt about that. But for a time in the AWA, Steven Regal would be brought into that organization too. And he would work with Jimmy Garvin, of course, in the Freebirds and do some other things. But when I first got acquainted with Steven Regal, it was his connection with Jimmy Garvin that I remembered. And then he immediately came in and had a feud with Denny Brown, which may have been featured in the Bash. I know it was about that. It was either 85 or 86. It was right around there. But Sam Houston was a pretty important guy too. He was one of those really close friends with Magnum TA and with Dusty Rhodes when they were doing the whole Midnight Rider gimmick sometimes to throw the Four Horsemen off, or the Midnight Express. Sam Houston would show up as the Midnight Rider and not Dusty Rhodes, and everybody would like tripping out. And Dusty Rhodes would show up on stage, and it would be Sam Houston as the Midnight Rider. He had a completely different physique and everything. But this is actually a gym. I enjoy.
For what it's worth, Denny Brown and Regal fought to a draw on the opener of the July 5th Great American
So
Bash.
It was 86. I was thinking it might have been the 85 batch, but yeah, it was right around this time when they did that. So this is a match that has junior world heavyweight championship implications, and obviously, Denny Brown is also going to be on this card too, doing other things. But I thought it was pretty cool.
Yeah, I was like Sam Houston was incredibly over with the crowd, and I'm not gonna pretend to be the wrestling historian that Rob is and say when I read this card that I knew who all these people were. But I mean, that crowd reaction definitely caused me to look deeper and learn more about Sam Houston, and had a great career, and great guy. A lot of stuff Rob just covered, just the importance.
Dave Scooby pointing out in the chat that he's Jake Roberts' little brother. Is that correct?
He's half brother.
Yes.
Yeah.
Half brother.
Gotcha. Sorry, Will. I didn't mean to cut you
No,
off.
yeah. But I mean that, and that again, another reason why I actually liked not having commentary is because I am like, as most of us probably are as wrestling fans, I'm like a crowd pop guy. Like I get into those crowd pops, and it was the opening bout, and that probably had a lot to do with it. But man, you could tell like as soon as he showed up on the scene, man, that crowd was lit. And I thought the whole match was great. It was a screwy finish. I'm not a big fan of screwy finishes. I like how they milked it a little bit, and they kind of acted like they were going to restart the match, I think. Like he was trying to convince the ref, that was screwy. And then Regal was like, nah, screw this. I won. I'm out of here. So I thought it was good. And I could definitely, it left me wanting more, Rob, to your point, to see these two guys continue to feud and to throw a belt in the mix like that would definitely be interesting.
Yeah, that's a really good point about the crowd reaction. Again, Houston's one of the guys too. I think about is just like that they love him. They loved him as a baby face. Like you could tell the crowd was behind him. That's one of the things that really gets this show over when you can sit back and watch it, is just how into this show's crowd is the entire time. And it's pretty impressive. It seems like a great, like big crowd too. Like it just felt big. Like I enjoyed the show a lot. So the next matchup on the card would have been, I enjoyed this one. It was Black Bart and the Barbarian taking on Denny Brown and the Italian Stallion. And so this was a pretty straightforward match. Black Bart and Barbarian defeated Denny Brown and Italian Stallion after the Barbarian hits a flying headbutt off the top. Standout for this one for me was the Barbarian, and just that I've always thought that guy was huge and menacing, but you could really tell they were behind him in that way. a little while 80s with the Barbarian. He kind of becomes a member of the Heenan family in the WWF, and that's how I always knew him growing up. And I always thought he seemed like a badass, but he never got booked quite as badass as I thought he should be around when, you know, Hogan's throwing him around or something. But during this time, nobody gets nothing on the Barbarian. Like, the Barbarian whoops ass throughout this match.
Yeah, he was a standout for sure. That was my same takeaway, Gary. Just that, you know, I've seen the Barbarian here and there, as you mentioned, but in this match particularly, I was like, dude is a hoss. He's a worker. Like, he put out an incredible effort and really made the match for me. You know, in an otherwise not super interesting match. Obviously, me not having the context of any storyline, Rob, you may know a little more about those four gentlemen and them working together. But just within the confines of just a wrestling match, I thought it was a great match. I thought he had a lot to do with it.
Denny Brown and Black Bart, I know we talked about them. They were both in the junior heavyweight title picture and the Mid-Atlantic Championship, which is a very historic title as well. Interesting thing about this match is that
Black Bart was the champion at this time on that one.
Right.
Sorry, I keep jumping.
No, you're fine. They were in the stable. Black Bart was. We had a discussion a few weeks back on factions versus stables, and both Black Bart and Conga the Barbarian. He would go by Conga the Barbarian, and eventually just became the Barbarian. But they were in the stable with Paul Jones, along with like T.J. Khan, Baron von Raschke, Shasta Pistol Pez Watley, the Raging Bull Manny Fernandez, and so this was one of the instances in which we have the number one Paul Jones Army in action, not involving necessarily Jimmy Valiant directly, but Denny Brown was a very close friend of Jimmy Valiant, and so the war was playing out on this front. The other interesting thing is that the Italian Stallion. Some of you, I know James Lawrence is going to remember this. Scooby might know. Italian Stallion was one of those what we call enhancement talents. He was a preliminary guy. A lot of times he would go in and they, like I said, do the job. Except he was one that was really, really good, like kind of like action Mike Jackson. He sort of always fell short. He was in an exchange with Ric Flair and actually pinned Ric Flair in a non-title match on one of the Saturday shows. And this set up a little feud with Ric Flair and the Italian Stallion. And there was a lot of fanfare around him. So coming, and I don't know, I can't remember, maybe someone in the chat can enlighten us here. I can't remember if it was before or after this, but the Italian Stallion was very, very respected. And he was not, this wasn't considered a sure thing for Paul Jones' Army, but this is basically another battle in the Jimmy Valiant versus Paul Jones Army war, which had so much meaning for the fans and which is going to come to a climax here on this particular, in this bash between Paul Jones himself and Jimmy Valiant.
Yeah, you know, I had not seen Black Bart, so that was a little treat for me here too. I had not really, just not seen many matches with Black Bart. I'd always heard of Black Bart and heard stories about Black Bart, but had never seen him in action. So that was interesting for me. But again, the Barbarian. Just one thing that really stood out to me, if I could just say, is go back and watch this match, and he throws like the big boot at one point, and it looks like he is murdering someone. Like, it is not like when Hogan would hold the big boot and a guy just runs face first into Hogan's boot. Like, Barbarian like lunges, like throws the boot in your face. Like, he's like, I'm taking your head. Like, it's mine now. And I was blown away by that. I was like, he just killed someone. That is crazy. But anyway, he was very good. I could see why people were behind him. Yeah. And probably just, he was probably more of a body guy. Maybe I just like big tough guys like that. But it just anyway, just a fun match. Next up, we had Manny Fernandez defeating Baron von Raschke with Paul Jones that Rob just mentioned. It was a loaded glove on a pole match, which was just kind of fun. You don't see many of those. My mind always takes me back just because of the age I am, I guess, to the coal miner's glove match, spin the wheel, make a deal, but with like Jake the Snake. But anyway, loaded glove on a pole match. Baron von Raschke. One thing that was blowing me away so far about this show, by the way, too, was that Barbarian and Bart went over, and so did Steve Regal. So you've got the first two opening matches on the show are heels taking the win here. And then Von Raschke ends up getting the glove first, ends up trying to swing on Manny Fernandez, but Manny ends up dodging it every single time and then just gets a quick like flying body press and for the pin 1, 2, 3 and gets a quick win and he's out of there. So it's a fun little match, but it's always cool. I like seeing Bear Von Raschke anyway. I think he's kind of a cool wrestler.
Yeah, one thing that it's probably applicable to bring up at this point, this is when I believe the show turned into the Great American Bloodbath, because I think every match from here on out, there was blood in some form or fashion. This one was Baron Von Raschke with, I forget the name of the move when he palms the dude's head. I'm sure there's a name for it.
Oh, the claw.
The claw, yeah, the claw. When he put the claw on and Manny was just bleeding, I mean, it looked brutal. Stuff like that really, really gets you going in terms of, when we talk about authenticity and things like that. It's just super cool to see. Yeah, I mean, it was a great match. I love the story it told. I love Manny Fernandez. I think he's everything I've ever seen him in. He was great, and so that was a treat to get to see him. And I thought it was a great match.
Manny Fernandez here is about to, and I don't think we're going to be covering any of the Bash show here as we go on, so this won't be a spoiler, but Manny Fernandez is about to make a heel turn. He is a baby here, and he's going to accept Paul Jones's money shortly after this match to join the Army. And eventually, I don't remember if it was this year or maybe 87. I think might have been later this year. He and Ravishing Rick Rude form a tag team and actually beat Ricky and Robert for the belt and had one of the greatest NWA title runs ever. They were a stout tag team, he and Rick Rude. So just a little bit of context there.
Oh, that's good stuff. All right, and then we'll move on to the next matchup, which you want to talk about a bloodbath. Well, it gets really going in this one when Wahoo McDaniel takes on Jimmy Garvin with Precious in an Indian strap match. And I mean, I don't know, it wasn't but like 5 minutes into this, it felt like, and all of a sudden Wahoo McDaniel was just a blood fountain. He was just like his head turned into a spigot. He had the proverbial crimson mask just pouring down his face. And this match was a lot of fun, by the way. I really like this. I think Jimmy Garvin and Wahoo were really cool to watch. And Wahoo just seems like tough as nails. And Jim plays that perfect chicken shit heel kind of guy. Just scared of what he's going to do and doesn't want to be tied up to him. And it was just a lot of fun. Wahoo obviously gets the win here because good talk, everybody.
Okay. Well, you
were breaking up. You were breaking. I was going to jump in, but you were breaking up. I don't know if it was your internet or mine, but I didn't know if you were done.
Oh, no, it does say, yeah, my internet just went unstable. Weird. Okay, sorry about that.
Yeah, no, I was
trying to put that on us, man.
My favorite.
That's what we deal with, man.
My favorite part of this match was I like how Wahoo used the strap to keep Garvin in the ring. That was, because it's a classic heel move. They're intimidated. They don't want to fight. They're chicken. They roll out. And every time he did, Wahoo would pull him back in the ring. I thought that was super entertaining to see. That was kind of, he literally kept him on a leash and made him come fight him. So that was a really cool aspect of it.
Yeah, Wahoo McDaniel, man, one of the all-time greats. Ric Flair regularly cites him as one of the toughest, hardest opponents ever. Held the U.S. championship. I think Magnum TA won the U.S. title from Wahoo, if I'm not mistaken. And here, Jimmy Garvin, one of my probably top 5 favorites of all time, man. In an amazing match, and was escorted by Precious, the beautiful, gorgeous, matchlessly pretty Precious. Just the Indian strap match, man. It's classic. Love it. Great storytelling again.
Was Precious your first love, Rob?
My first love was Missy Hyatt.
There you go.
And
Don't blame
Tila
you.
from Masters of the Universe.
I don't blame you there either. All right. So next up in the event, we had Tully Blanchard with J.J. Dillon defeats Ron Garvin in a taped fist match. Did not see this one going this way, but they did a great job of really just getting Ron Garvin over as like a tough SOB, just like beating the snot out of Tully Blanchard the entire time. And even after Tully like gets the glove loaded up by JJ, I mean, Ron still stays on top of it for a little bit, but finally just squeaking out a win there when they head outside. But thoughts on this match, fellas?
A lot of blood. A lot more blood.
Boy, Tully Blanchard was a freaking biohazard, man. That sugar was a bleeder. Like, he and Magna TA back in '85 had this fantastic like I Quit match, and it's like I think it was 5. It's in a cage, and it's like Tully Blanchard is just he's one of those ones like Dusty and Flair, man. He can't walk into a ring without getting busted open. But fantastic match. I always like Ronnie Garvin. I don't think he gets enough respect. Tully Blanchard's one of the greatest of all time. No doubt about it. He's the very first really cool bad guy, you know. And so again, this is this story right here is the not really faction or stable, but just the NWA fam that existed in those days between Magnum, Ronnie, Dusty, and the Rock and Roll Express and Sam Houston against one of the guys that were that was with the Horseman, Tully Blanchard. And so they had this perennial feud from, you know, late '85 all the way through '87, '88, and it was always those guys in the mix. So this is you know, their fam representing the Horseman fam, and it was you know, it'd be like if me and Gary and Will and Jay Cow and RJ and WWE Front Row and Wrestling with MMA went up against Prichard and all his goons. We'd kill them. We'd bust that tail.
Well, that's basically what we're doing.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's essentially it.
Yeah, this match.
Clearly, we're winning.
The other thing I noted about this match, they introed it by saying it was going to be, I think, 10 3-minute rounds, and with 30 seconds between each round for rest. And immediately when they said that, I said, that's too long. That is too much. And luckily it only went 4 rounds out of the 10. So I was nothing against those guys. But this obviously wasn't a traditional wrestling match, which I'm here for traditional wrestling matches. Some gimmicks, which there were a lot in this event. But this was one of the gimmicks that I was like, that would be too much. So thankfully it went 4 rounds. And this was just your classic story of, you know, Tully gets attacked before the match really even starts. He never really rebounds from that and then gets the edge at the end. And so it was a good story overall. I think they were right on the verge of giving it too much time in this show, but I was happy.
Yeah. 2 things would be that, yeah, I noticed that the announcer here, he was having a little trouble anyway, because he also announced like Rod Garvin, like he had won the match, and he had clearly not won the match. And so he had to correct that, which I'm sure wrecked the minds of that crowd. Also, I pictured Rob Stinson as more of an evil in kind of guy. It's not into the bad girls, I guess, huh?
Yeah.
Weird laugh there. That was a weird laugh.
I know, it's a really weird laugh. He was like, oh, like Tila's the kind of girl you take home to your mama, but I'd be sneaking out for some evil in every now and then. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. That's right. That's what's up.
Man, I am really creeped out by the weird laughs that Rob is giving about this whole conversation.
I am too.
Not like you haven't heard that laugh before, Gary.
We have not. I have not heard that before. That was new for me.
Hey, just in the spirit of full disclosure, I also was really into the sorceress, Tila's mom. She was hot as a mug too in Masters of the Universe. So it's not just the bad girls, okay?
No, it's true. This sounds like a video you could find on certain sites though. So we're gonna move on. We'll do-
Those sites don't sponsor us yet.
Those sites don't sponsor us. We'll work on that. We'll let Rob get on that. Anyway, all right, let's move on to the next matchup. We'll do a He-Man episode later. The Rock and Roll Express, Ricky and Robert, take on the Minnesota Wrecking Crew, Ole and Arn Anderson, and they go to a draw in this tag team matchup. Very good match, by the way, just all around. I don't know what else to even say about it. This is a clinic. These guys are like, all of these guys are just really good at what they do. And God bless Arn Anderson. God bless Ricky Morton and Robert Gibson. Ole looks like he's just mean as hell. And that's it's just a fun match to watch.
I mean, the first thing I noticed is this made me really excited for what could happen with the Young Bucks and FTR, because that's what I felt like. It felt like that same kind of rivalry.
That's a good point.
And right. So that was one of the dots that I connected with then to now, because obviously the Young Bucks take so much of their stuff from rock and roll. I mean, they're essentially the modern day rock and roll. They haven't accomplished the same stuff, and they still have a lot of legacy to build ahead of them. But that comparison, as I was watching this match, was just really cool. But it looked like two super cool rock stars fighting two dads. Like, it was just such an interesting dynamic there. But it was a great match, man. Arn Anderson's my all-time favorite, partly because of his ability to sell. He was selling that leg this whole match. I mean, you believe that Arn Anderson is in a fight no matter who he's fighting. He was carrying that TV title, and like he did so often. And so it was a really fun match. Again, like you said, just a clinic. But I mean, all parties involved came to play in it, and it was a stellar bout. We lost Rob because I mentioned another wrestling promotion. I mentioned the Young Bucks
he
and
falls
FTR,
off every
and
time.
Rob fell asleep.
You're I'm just thinking, like, you're right, man. That's good summary. Anything the Rock and Roll Express did was magic. Minnesota Wrecking Crew, although this version is not probably the best version of that team, they're pretty freaking good. And you can't put anything. I mean, like you said, the way Arn Anderson sells is amazing. I want to say that Ricky and Robert. Gosh, man, I can't quite remember. I think that Ricky and Robert at one point switched the belts with Ole and Arn. Did that happen?
That feels right, actually. I feel like
I think that happened. I know that Ricky and Robert won the belts from the Russians, but I think at some point around this time frame there was a title switch, and of course the Midnight Express comes into the mix also. There's no love lost between it. Again, this is another iteration of the feud between the Dusty Rhodes led faction and the Four Horsemen. So every match is important. Every match has implications with what's going on in the broader context of the NWA. Nothing is just randomly thrown in here. So.
Yeah. Next match on the card had Paul Jones taking on Jimmy Valiant. Paul Jones has Shaska Watley in his corner, and they are doing a hair versus hair match. This was like, I don't know. I was super into this idea, and I really like Jimmy Valiant, I think, but for some reason I never got as into this match as I wanted to, if that makes sense.
The match wasn't good. Just so people know, we're not like just putting over everything we see in vintage wrestling. This wasn't a good match. The hair cutting at the end was interesting, but it was like a little bit scary. Jimmy Valiant's facial expression, like he looked like he had a mood swing mid head shave, like that kind of freaked me out, and I didn't know if they were like going anywhere with that. But yeah, I mean, this was a gimmick match at its finest. I mean, I'm sure for the live crowd at the time, and Rob, you may have some context for this as well that we don't, but I'm sure it was meaningful. But it was kind of a little lull for me in this show.
you're not going to get standard technical wrestling from either Pistol Pez Watley or Jimmy Valiant. They're both great wrestlers, great entertainers. That's not what you're going to get. You're going to get, they're basically fighters, both of them. And this was outstanding match. I have to disagree respectfully because of the context. I mean, Pistol Pez Watley and Jimmy Valiant were friends for years, as was the Raging Bull Manny Fernandez. They were a family. They tagged together for years and years and years. Pistol Pez Watley had only recently joined the Army. He and if I remember correctly, again, some of you guys can correct me, there was an interview with Jimmy Valiant and Pistol Pez Watley, and they were just talking about their war with Paul Jones and the Barbarian and Baron and all those guys. And at one point in the match, or in the interview, Valiant makes the comment just in passing that he has Pistol Pez Watley with him, the greatest black wrestler of all time. And when he said the greatest black wrestler, Pez Watley stops in mid-interview and he attacks and turns on Jimmy Valiant. And we learned that he'd been bought out and had won the Army. Well, Jimmy Valiant is a regular guy. He would always make, interviews about, hey, I've got, I'm making ends meet. I'm just going to have this job on the side and I'm a millionaire. And the only thing I have to offer up is my hair. That's all I have to give. And so he put his hair on the line in this match, lost the match. Well, guess what? There are 2 other hair versus hair matches in this match. So later on, since he loses his hair at this point, his sidekick, his longtime girlfriend, who he called Big Mama, and he actually had Big Mama's name tattooed on his knuckles, he put Big Mama's hair up against later on Paul Jones's hair and Shaska Watley's hair in this feud. And of course, as we know, Jimmy Valiant wins those 2 matches and gets his revenge later on. But this was the one that sort of, Jimmy Valiant had that long blonde hair, and that was his thing, and kind of like Josephus. Let me tell you, the people who perfected, the guys who perfected the hair versus hair genre of matches that we still see going on today was Jimmy Valiant and Paul Jones. So this has important historic implications even for the NWA today.
Very cool. Love getting that backstory on it from Rob Stinson. That's why we hired the good doctor, because he can provide us with that. So for me, I mean, obviously we didn't have that kind of context, I guess, and so that's why Will and I had that little lull there. But it would be quickly reversed for myself when we get to the very next matchup, which is Magnum TA versus Nikita Koloff in their best of 7 series. Now, I did get a little context on this one at the time. I remember basically Bob Geigel was overseeing a interview between Nikita Koloff or like the Russians, and Magnum TA would have like his mom like there at the table too, and they were discussing it, and Nikita kept taunting him, basically telling him he's a mama's boy. She's got him by the apron strings, that kind of stuff, just pushing him. And in the little video clip that I saw, essentially he says that, this basically just goes to prove that, Russian women are superior and know their place and American women are trash or something like that. And this pisses off Magnum TA, and he jumps on him, and this gets out of hand. Bob Geigel kind of tries to interfere, settle things down, and Magnum TA ends up slapping him across the face, basically. And this causes Magnum TA to be stripped of the United States Championship, essentially. And he and Nikita are going to have a best of 7 series to determine who's going to be the new U.S. champion. And at this point in the best of 7 series, I think, let me see here. Yeah, it was Koloff was up by 3. And this was going to mean that Magnum needed 4 straight wins to go. Now, for history's sake, it's worth noting this best of 7 series ends up being like a 9-match series. It doesn't go 7. And but the important part of this one is it's a badass match, and Magnum gets his first win, a very emotional win, and begins his trek to getting back to winning the best of 7 tournament. I watched this, and you can totally see why Magnum's the man, and you could totally see like Nikita is such a freaking hoss. Like he is just like the perfect wrestler. Like he just looks like the perfect wrestler. I mean, he just looks like an action figure, I guess is what I'm going for. And it's just what a fun match. And there's a part where Magnum like busts his head on the post, and I thought he was dead, and he barely makes it back in for the 10 count at one point. And anyway, just a great match, but Magnum does come out on top, and that crowd freaking goes nuts when he wins that matchup. But I'll stop rambling. What did you guys think of this one?
You hit the nail on the head, man. Nikita Koloff looked great. Having more context for this feud, obviously I was a little more bought in to the match as a whole. It was insanely good. Anytime I see a Magnum TA match, I do get a little sad for what could have been, had he not had his accident. And but I'm glad we got what we got with this feud. I think it's one of those landmark things in pro wrestling, especially NWA pro wrestling. I thought the finish was interesting to this particular bout, but yeah, man. I mean, this was the treat of the night for me, hands down.
This is one of the, along with the Paul Jones stuff, and I know that's going to sound a little bit weird because they, they're not, main eventers, but along with the Paul Jones stuff, this was the emotional high point of the whole Bash thing, the Nikita Magnum thing. I mean, don't get me wrong, what Ric Flair and Dusty do later is very important, and that series of defenses was the most important thing for sure. And you guys know that I think that I've said this before. I think the Dusty Flair match is my favorite match of all time, in the greatest year of all time. But the Magnum TA Nikita Koloff Best of 7 series is the emotional peak of this. And there is an outstanding RF video or high spots interview with Nikita and Magnum called The Feud. And in it, like what you were saying, they said this wasn't just really a 7-match deal. They did several house shows larger than that, like every time they'd go, because there wasn't a lot of syndication and people weren't seeing these matches, that every time they'd go to a town, they'd bill it as one of the 7. And then when they did these visible matches, they would ascribe a number to it, and it's part of the story writing. But I was afraid of Nikita, man. I was afraid of Nikita Koloff in those days. He was a monster. He was one of those really big dudes like the Road Warriors. He would go on to have a really historic feud with Ric Flair even. And I just remember, and this is the height of the Cold War too. So there's that world context too, where everything was so believable. Kayfabe was a real thing back then. And when I saw Ivan and Nikita and then Crusher Khrushchev turn and join the Russians, he was an American before that, but I believed it. Like I was terrified of these guys. And this series, man, was like, gosh, man, it emotionally after this happened, everything else was downhill, from the sense that you felt like you couldn't really invest your heart into anything else that happened, because Magnum TA was representing Old Glory, man. He was representing the red, white, and blue, and we felt it. It was by the way, just as a little side note, Nikita Koloff, who's coming on Piper's Notes the Friday after next, he's actually a relative of mine. So through marriage and this and that, but we talked a little
Nobody
bit about
helped
that.
you out with that when you were scared of him?
At the time, I wasn't related to him yet. I only got related to him when he's actually related through my wife Tanya. My wife Tanya's dad is Nikita Koloff's deceased wife's brother. So he had a part of the storyline of him becoming a babyface was Mandy Koloff, his beautiful wife, passed away in for real, and they had during Perestroika, and of course Magnum went through his very tragic injury, and that all played into Nikita Koloff becoming one of the great baby faces ever, and joining forces with Dusty Rhodes to form the Superpowers. But Nikita's wife Mandy is my wife's dad's sister. So what's that? Aunt-in-law? I don't know how you say.
Yeah.
Anyway,
that feels right. No, that's cool, man. The thing is with this, I mean, for context, it's what I really enjoyed was just seeing these guys, two guys like really solidly in their prime, doing battle here. And what would end up happening is Magnum get his 3 wins in the official series, and they would wrestle like 2 more matches that both went to like double DQ. And so it would take a 9th match in Charlotte and later in August. So it would go outside of the Great American Bash series. And Koloff would finally get the win and take the U.S. championship. But that was actually, and we'll do a deep dive on Magnum someday and Nikita, I'm sure. But it was actually just to help move along like all of this long-term planning, man. This was all to build that like Ric Flair was going to keep being dastardly and win the title back from Dusty, and Magnum would move on from the U.S. title and move on to take on Ric Flair and win the World's Heavyweight Championship eventually. But of course, as Rob pointed out, that due to the accident, that doesn't end up happening. Anyway, one of my other favorite matches from this show that was just a nice, more lighthearted bit of fun, even if the Road Warriors were involved, who looked like they would just destroy anybody who crossed paths with them. It was the Road Warriors, Animal and Hawk, with Baby Doll and Paul Ellering, and they defeated the Midnight Express, Bobby Eaton and Dennis Condrey, along with Jim Cornette. Now, my highlights of this match include the fact that Jim Cornette owns the audience like nobody else. Just him trying to escape a tag by climbing up the side of the cage, like all of that stuff's fun. Or like when anybody comes near him, he like ducks by the ropes, and you can hear the people just like buying into everything Cornette does. Also, Road Warriors are badasses, and Bobby Eaton is still a god, and there is that. And Dennis Condrey, honestly, is really amazing too. So these guys, I never appreciated them as much as I should have, and over the last like year, I have learned to really just freaking love the Midnight Express. I think they are quite possibly the greatest tag team that ever existed. So anyway, you guys go ahead.
Yeah, it was interesting to have a steel cage match before the steel cage match, the main event. That was one of the things. It was almost like a steel cage warm-up match. But yeah, it was, I mean, always entertaining. Jim Cornette always has the audience in the palm of his hand, even if, I mean, especially because they hate him. But I mean, I think everything went off the way it was supposed to in this match, and it came across, and Baby Doll getting the pin was perfect, I thought.
Yeah. Baby Doll had been with Tully Blanchard. She was his longtime arm candy and sidekick, and she had left Tully Blanchard. There was a big feud between her and the Midnight Express. At one point, Jim Cornette gained. Of course, Jim Cornette is always embroiled in controversy, but at one point he actually hit Baby Doll at a time when that was not. This is well before the Attitude Era. You didn't hit women. It didn't happen a lot. You had other women do that, or every now and again a guy would, jerk a girl around, but you didn't do that. Well, Jim Cornette actually hit Baby Doll in the abdomen with his tennis racket, and she was hospitalized, and that set the tone for this feud. But again, the Road Warriors, the most devastating tag team of all time versus maybe the greatest tag team of all time. So in the cage. So fantastic.
I was going to mention that yeah, I was reading a little bit up on the context as well in this feud, and it was that like, yeah, him and Baby Doll had several battles up and down the East Coast, just based off the fact that he had nailed her in the gut with the tennis racket, and people just absolutely hated him and wanted to murder Jim Cornette.
They wanted him fired, man. They wanted him fired. They didn't want him in the show.
We mentioned on the July 5th show of the Great American Bash, it was Dusty and Magnum that were in the match against the Night Express, and they had Baby Doll. They were apparently a big part of this feud too because of Dusty and Baby Doll's relationship. And I was even reading about at one point that they came in as the James Gang, Magnum TA and Dusty Rhodes, and ended up tying Jim Cornette up by his neck and tying him to the bumper of the car and dragging him around. And I was like, oh my God, this is nuts.
Actually, I think there's a couple of instances in which they do a 6-man type thing, and Baby Doll's the third partner on one end, and Cornette's on the other end, and Baby Doll gets her hands on Cornette and just like manhandles him. It's hilarious.
Yeah, well, they started off really good in this one with Cornette like egging her on to get into the ring to take him on one if she had any guts, and but that's just a ruse to get like Eaton, who runs and jumps into the ring and runs at Baby Doll, but Baby Doll ends up hitting the arm drag, which was kind of cool on Bobby Eaton, and Bobby Eaton sells it like a champ. And of course, the ending is Baby Doll just like knocking the hell out of I'm sorry, Jim Cornette. Rob just sent me a meme on my phone, and it's like a prairie dog and turd coming out of somebody's butt. So it's just put
that evil on me. I'm just doing my work as a journalist, Gary.
Listen, he probably got it from your Instagram stories.
Well, it's going to be on my Instagram story. I can tell you that much. Anyway, let's head to the main event. We're talking Dusty Rhodes versus Ric Flair for the NWA World's Heavyweight Championship. A steel cage bloodbath between these two legends. And it's everything that it's supposed to be, as these two are most well-known names in wrestling history, and it's exactly what you want out of them. The biggest surprise for me, I have to say, watching this is I don't know if I realized how much Ric behind him, like, and as far as crowd reaction, like I feel like the crowd was like kind of into Ric Flair. Even during this, there was a lot of people that were just kind of like, this guy's too good. Love this guy. You know, just that same kind of deal that we talk about with Aldis or something now. But, you know, I know like Ric Flair's at a point in his career now that like literally there's nothing for the past like 10 to 15 years. There's nothing Ric Flair could do that can make him a heel. But even during this time in '86, like it felt like the crowd was they just respected him too much. Like he just had the oomph, the aura, and especially, by the way, added to it by the fact that I don't know if it's just the tape we're watching or if nobody really had entrance music except for him, but he's the only one on the tape. And when he comes out to his music, it's just something about it is just even more epic. Like he is he is Darth Vader coming to the ring or something. Like he is just, there's something way more epic.
Who?
Yeah. Oh yeah. Sorry, Will, you wouldn't get that reference. Anyway, he's a really important person.
Dumbledore.
He's like an emperor coming to the ring, and yeah. Anyway.
Yeah, it was very ceremonious. That was one of the things that I noted as well. And I mean, the cool thing to me about this, you know, we just covered the Great American Bash 1990 a couple of weeks or a few weeks back. And just to think about, you know, the 4-year gap between these shows, and Rick was still, I mean, and we all know that he has a long legendary career, but getting to see 1986 Ric Flair is at the top of his game. He is, you know, he's respected, as you just mentioned. I don't want to use the term over because he wasn't, you know, a baby face necessarily. And as we see in this match, Dusty obviously was, but I mean, to see how over he was then and respected, and then 4 years later, he's still at that spot. That's unheard of nowadays. The guys come and go. They're almost here today, gone today. Like that's how quick runs in modern wrestling are. And so that just gave me another level of context for Flair and his position, not only in the NWA, but just in wrestling in general.
Right. And you think, I mean, Flair is in the midst of officially he's in the midst of his second title reign here. And he is roughly, give or take a couple hundred days, because when you're up to, you know, 600-700 days, what's another 100 days, right? He's roughly about where Nick Aldis is now. You know, I think Rick's a little bit further along, but by this point, Rick is is already. This is why when we have these debates about should we now be considering Nick Aldis one of the greats of all time, I'm going to tell you right now, guys, based on what Gary said in that reaction that was really there, and James Lawrence, who went and saw one of these matches in person, yes, in 1986, Ric Flair was already regarded as maybe the greatest of all time. And he is where Nick Aldis is now. So it's not premature. It's perfectly legitimate. And the quality of opponents was about where Nick's is. So it was a great, but this is my favorite match of all time, man, even though my man Flair loses in this match. If you watch the WWE's packaged documentaries on Ric Flair and Dusty Rhodes, both of them use this match as sort of the benchmark of their feud, and they have Sweet Victory is playing in the background. It's just perfect, man. And what a Greek myth right here. I mean, you want to talk about literature, you really want to talk about wrestling being high culture, this is it.
Well, hey, it's funny you mentioned that because I was actually looking at some of the results on the site, 411 Mania, and the guy gives this 9 out of 10, and he points out in his recap of this match, he says here at the end, Dusty recovers quickly and throws Flair into the wall for a 2. Elbowed by Dusty, misses. Flair tries to slam him. Dusty leans back and turns it into a cradle for 3. And the crowd is not expecting this. Dusty Rhodes is the new World's Heavyweight Championship. All of the baby faces head back to the ring to congratulate him while Flair is left alone in the corner, totally ignored, which, if you'll recall, November 1983, when Ric Flair was in a cage surrounded by baby faces celebrating his world title win, and the old champ was left alone in the corner, totally ignored. That's art.
Mm-hmm. It is. And another thing about that, we always talk about gimmick matches, and you guys know where I feel about that. But the one that I've always said I like is 2 out of 3 and the cage match. And the cage match, historically, when it's done right, it is designed to end the reign of the bad guy, to cut out all the shenanigans, and to give the good guy finally a fair shake. Happened in 83, and now the tables are turned. It happens to Flair in 86. So it's just like, I'm getting chills right now, guys. I really am.
And this was like a brutal cage. This isn't like the cages now that are really nice and buttoned up and these nice clean corners. I mean, when they were on the top of the cage and Dusty was, bashing Flair's head in on top, you could see the spikes of the steel fence that were coming up above. I mean, it was brutal, man. It wasn't like even Hell in a Cell. Even Hell in a Cell is brutal, but like, they have smooth edges and all that kind of stuff, and the top covering and all that. This was like a fence that you see in someone's yard. This was very unrefined, very like backyard brawl style, and that just added that element of that realness to it. And it was nuts, man.
Yeah, and the other thing too, I'd just like to point out is like when we talk about gimmick matches and that sort of thing, like I almost don't even look at like I can't speak for Will, but at least for the time period when I grew up into wrestling, I considered those cage matches gimmick matches because they were like right. The goal was to get out of the cage, and it turns it into like a game almost. And I always thought that's just how cage matches. I thought that's how they were supposed to be. But
that's the stupidest stipulation when it comes to cage matches. And now with this new wave, and I don't know how recent this is. I know like most modern quote unquote cage matches, like you can walk out the door. What is that? That's not a cage match. That's a door match. Like I've seen matches in WWE where guys like win the match by walking out having the ref open the door and they walk. That's ridiculous. This was a cage match. You had to win it in the cage. You couldn't climb out. If there was climbing out, it was to give that storyline element that like Ric Flair was trying to escape the beating that he was taking at the hands of Dusty Rhodes. It wasn't because he would win the match by climbing out, and it wasn't a race to climb out. Again, it's a true blue cage match. I mean, you had to win it inside the ring, fair and square, and that's what happened. Dusty won it.
Yeah, I think that was the weird part of it for me is like I never understood, and my logic logic didn't kick in until later, where it would be exactly like what we're talking about here. It's like, why would a babyface ever try to leave the fight? That's not what a babyface does. They're supposed to be like, you're trapped in there because you're trapped. Nobody can run away. Nobody can get out. Nobody can come in. There has to be a winner in this match. And that makes so much more sense. And then to get these two guys, they make it as brutal looking as it could possibly be. And it's a beautiful match. It really, really is. And I can't say enough good things about it. And it makes me appreciate a cage match. And it's so I think where I was going with that even was that I don't, it's almost like the cage match. I almost don't even count it like a gimmick match. It is, but it's just like, no, it just makes sense. Like, it's just like, let's get these guys in it. It's like the UFC uses the octagon, whatever. Like, it's just like that extra layer of protection to like, these two guys are going to fight until somebody can't go on. And it just makes a lot of sense. Anyway, so that's a Great American Bash 1986. I was looking through some other stuff, just record, just for that year. And the Pro Wrestling Illustrated, they had their one of their first, I believe, Dave Meltzer was kind of jumping into the thing here, and they had the voting. PWI Wrestler of the Year for 86 was Ric Flair. Tag Team of the Year was the Rock and Roll Express. And the match of the year was Ric Flair versus Dusty Rhodes at the Great American Bash. And just a lot of cool stuff like that. By the way, just for the record, PWI Rookie of the Year for this year was going to end up being Lex Luger. Oh, wow. So, but yeah, even in the Wrestling Observer newsletter, sorry, I was talking about PWI. Wrestling Observer was kicking in here too, and that's where Meltzer's at. Wrestler of the Year there was Ric Flair, also Most Outstanding of the Year, and Tag Team of the Year for them was the Midnight Express. So, and Best Interview was Jim Cornette. So they NWA owning like most of these categories during this time. Hogan versus Orndorff was getting some love for the WWF side of things, I think, but the big dogs were still considered the NWA guys, like the real wrestlers. And Great American Bash got its love during this time as well, as being one of the great events. That Dusty versus Flair match is going down as one of the all-time classics for the NWA World's Heavyweight Championship. Anything else you guys want to add for the Great American Bash 86?
Just that people, a lot of people will look back on Flair's back catalog of matches and they hold his series with Ricky Steamboat in as the hallmark, and it is. It's great stuff. I'm not saying that, but really it's the Dusty Rhodes Flair stuff that's it. And this match was, if there was ever a Super Bowl, it was this one. The other thing I was going to say is, and this just speaks to how good Crockett Promotions was, because honestly, freaking Hogan and Orndorff was pretty freaking good, man. That was a really intense feud with a guy that's one of my favorites of all time, Paul Orndorff. And, that you talk about somebody elevating Hogan's game, Orndorff did it. And that feud was outstanding, but it wasn't Flair Dusty. It's like, hey, we all got belts. The only difference is mine is gold and yours is silver.
Will, do you have anything you'd like to add?
No, it was a great show. I really enjoyed it. There's another one, as you mentioned, on the WWE Network. Was it the Charlotte show? What was the other one? There was two of these on there. Greensboro, which is one we covered just now, and one other one. It's escaping me, but I'm definitely going to go watch that one just for fun.
Absolutely. I'll just add this one little tidbit of information for our listeners on the podcast portion. And what we're going to do here, just for anybody who doesn't know how this works, we're going to continue talking to you guys for just a little bit longer on the after show of NWA. This is the NWA After Dark. So stick around if you're in the live chat. We love you guys in the live chat. We want to hang out and talk about whatever you guys want to talk about. And in order for the listeners of the podcast to get that portion, you got to join us live. So you got to make sure you hit up youtube.com/the NWA pod and click that subscribe button. If you're in the chat right now and you haven't done that, please do that. It helps us get in front of more people, and share it with your friends. Give us a 5-star review if you're just a podcast listener. And I say just a podcast listener, I mean that with all the love and respect. We appreciate you guys for listening to us. And so we're trying to do a better job of keeping these things organized so they make for better podcast episodes, actually, because we feel like we've neglected you guys a little bit too much. So with that, I will add this one little piece of news before we wrap up the podcast portion of this. Just got an alert and just checked it for myself. The Bruce Prichard interview about Nick Aldis that we played earlier in the show today will probably be on like a news portion for the podcast, talking about how Nick Aldis doesn't have quote unquote it, has been taken down.
Oh, buddy. So you heard it here. So
you can no longer find it on YouTube.
So you heard it here first and last.
Right. That clip has been removed from YouTube. So, but I would say, based on Twitter, too late. Too late.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
We're going to find out tomorrow.
Yep.
So we can't wait to hear what you guys think about that. Make sure you're tuned in to Busted Open Radio on Monday. And
luckily, we have it here on this show, so you can go back and listen to it, whatever I do, man. This is like, save this.
Assuming nobody tells Bruce or Conrad that they could just go here on this show and see that same video, that we'll still have it. So this will be fun. All right. Well, Will, tell everybody where they can find you on the social medias.
Yeah, at Hey It's Will with 1L, pretty much everywhere. You can find me Hey It's Will Daily right here on this channel, where I cover wrestling news, wrestling culture from the perspective of an NWA fan like myself. And also every Friday at 3 p.m. Eastern, noon Pacific, J-Cal from the Alliance blog and I go live on Instagram, and we do the Friday hot tag. This past week, we talked about matches we can't wait to see when Power returns. Talked about some feuds and things like that, and had a great conversation. Join us live on Instagram, or catch the video here on our channel, or the audio over on J-Cal's channel at the Alliance blog.
I'm at rstinson4 on Twitter. You can find me here every Sunday and Tuesday night hanging out with you guys. We love you so much and love the time. And on Friday, my daughter and I Piper drop Piper's Notes, which is usually a discussion with a wrestler, a rock star, a wrestling super fan, just relating wrestling to the general culture. We just had Eddie Kingston, and we're the only place that you can find an Eddie Kingston post AEW interview. And this next Friday, we've got one of our beloved family members, the lovely and amazing Dawn of Wrestling, will be on Piper's Notes, where we'll be covering Phantom of the Opera, music of the night. So look forward to that. And also just another news item. The Braves just beat the Mets 14-1. They are on pace to win 59 games this year, guys.
Wow. Go Braves. I know they don't do this anymore, but.
Well,
we do it.
I mean,
it'll
be up for debate sometime. All right. Well, I am at This Is Gary Horn. The show is at the NWA Pod on all the social medias. We hope you guys will join us and subscribe, like, save, forward, share, friends, all that stuff. Do the things. We're going to wrap up the podcast portion of this show. We want to thank you guys for listening to everything. Stick around if you're in the live chat, because we're just going live with you guys and talking for at least another 15, 20, 30 something minutes, depending. And we love you guys. And if you're listening to us, enjoy your gravy cake. All right. That will wrap the podcast portion of this.
Well,
here we are.
Do we have anything to talk about? I don't know. Do we have anything?
I don't know. There's nothing going on in wrestling.
Boy.
I can confirm. Hold on. Let me look at this, because I just looked at it just a second ago. that all this video that he posted, I mean, the damn thing has like over 35,000 views already for what we talked about it. So it's so they backed down, I guess.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
But like I said, too little, too late, I imagine, because I don't think from here that Nick Aldis is going to step down. See the Fortson jumping in, and the Fortson of all people jumping in to say Bruce Prichard is a horse's ass. But yeah, the woof. I can
tolerate the Fortson saying what he has to say about all this. I can tolerate wrestling with the MMA because I know that they know, and I know that they're educated, and they never disrespect Aldis in what he is doing for the belt. They never disrespect that.
Just disagree with choices he made.
Yeah, that's all it is, man. So Bruce Prichard made the costliest and most ignorant of mistakes to talk about something he don't know about, and now he's going to rip the whirlwind for it.
Well, here's what he did. He underestimated the hashtag NWA fam. He not only did he underestimate Nick Aldis, but he underestimated all of us because, while we're talking, a lot of times I'm just monitoring Twitter, checking stuff out, throwing out update tweets and stuff like that about this show. But man, it was lighting up about all of this, all from the NWA fam sounding off. And so, listen, yes, he underestimated all this, but he underestimated all of us as well, because whether you love him or hate him, as we're seeing in the chat from the Strictly Resistance faction of our fan base, you don't trash talk the NWA World's Heavyweight Champion on a personal level like that. That's not acceptable. And he went and did it, and now he's going to have to live with that. And I can't wait to hear what the champ has to say tomorrow, because I'm pretty sure he's gonna put his boot up somebody's ass tomorrow, and it's gonna be well earned at this point.
Oh no, I was looking at it and I just sent out the tweet, just basically echoing your exact sentiments. It's like Bruce Prichard just literally called out the entire hashtag NWA fam. Nick Aldis has earned everything he's gotten to this point, and Bruce Prichard has indeed also earned everything he's got coming to him tomorrow morning on Busted Open Radio. So this is I don't even know what he was thinking. It's
I'm talking about when you talk about like Eddie Kingston, we're talking about one of the most universally respected guys. Nick Aldis, say what you want about his choices or whatever, he is like universally respected by everyone, including guys like Triple H and everybody. What are you talking about, Prichard? What the freaking planet do you live on?
It's too much. I don't like it. So talk to us, the chat. What do you guys want to talk about? Do you just want to bury Bruce Prichard some more, or do you guys want to talk about Nick Aldis? Well, I mean, I'd be happy to. Just totally disagree with that. Like, oh God, screw him.
The bill on Gary's hat's gone up a little bit. You know what that means, guys?
It's getting real.
It's getting real.
Is it? Is that what it means?
Getting Costco over there in Greenville.
Oh yeah. You. Oh man. I wonder if we'll get an actual. Oh, go ahead, Will.
I'll say this while we're waiting for people in the chat to chime in with if there is anything else they want to talk about. But I do have on my my new. This is the NWA podcast snapback, soon to be available on the store, along with some other new designs and new merch and stuff. So head on over to the nwapod.com over the next few days to check that out. Still got the NWA fam merch over there. We're not losing money on it anymore. Sorry, everyone. But if you didn't get in on it, now you just got to pay full price, but still well worth it. And everyone that has ordered thus far has had nothing but good things to say about it, and are really enjoying sporting that stuff. So go check that out.
And the snapbacks are back in style, guys. They're back in style. So
I'm wearing one. They must be.
Yeah, no doubt.
I'm a beacon of style.
I'd be happy to sport one of those. But
I'm a beacon of style in 2020. That's one thing.
Yeah, no doubt about it, man.
Let's see here. WWE Front Row says Bruce Prichard has a good mind for the business, just not strictly business.
Hello.
Clever boy. Forza says Brother Love was a stupid gimmick anyway. Randall G, just side note, says sometimes I watch Power just to hear Into the Fire music. Yeah, that makes sense. I like.
Knocking boy.
Ryan Murphy says Bruce Prichard clearly doesn't watch NWA Power or his old crappy product. That's the thing, man. It feels like, I mean, dude, I don't know. If your show was on top of the mountain because you were just killing it every day, maybe you have some room to talk. I get it. You know, look, I'm just a mark, like Rob said, just a mark like anybody else out here. But it's just, and so I get he's been in the business a long, long time. But I mean, he's heading up a promotion that's on a steady decline right now. So, and then to just take the time to talk some trash about another dude's brand, another dude's hard work. I don't know.
It's like they've alluded to earlier. It's almost like he doesn't know what he's talking about. He can't be saying this and not see the body of work that all this is put in. And it's like he's not, authentic, whatever. What are you talking about? This is finally he's authentic. Finally, he is who he is. And that's why this particular area, we're living in a historic period. We're living in the reign of definitely the greatest current champion in any promotion. No doubt about it. And that's not just me saying it. Again, like Gary said, I'm just a mark, man. It's just my opinion. Don't listen to me. Listen to Dory Funk Jr. Listen to freaking Harley Race, what he had to say before he passed away. Listen to DDP. Listen to Dave LaGreca. Listen to Meltzer. Listen to what these guys are saying. It's not me. This is a universally held opinion. And so, like, honestly, Prichard, just because you're in the biz doesn't make you particularly or especially astute about this. And you're in the minority and you're actually woefully uninformed. You've shown your hand and you don't know what you're talking about. So
I 100% just don't think he's ever watched it. Like that's really what I believe. I believe he's never watched it. He was just trying to talk like he'd seen it before. And I think he's just.
I'd like to believe that he does have a little more knowledge than that statement would lead me to believe about wrestling. Cause I don't, you say what you want, and I do, about the current WWE product and his role in that. But I mean, I will say you don't get to that point without having some kind of mind for wrestling. So I'm like you, Gary. I just literally feel like he's speaking out of turn. He doesn't have any context for what he's saying. It's kind of like me trying to talk about a Paul Valiant hair versus hair, or Jimmy Valiant, sorry, hair versus hair match. You know what I mean? Like, I didn't have the context. So, without the proper context, you can't make a valid argument. I feel like that's what he's doing at the end of the day. I mean, he did come out like a week or two ago in an interview and say that he's tired and he doesn't sleep really well because of all the responsibility on him over in WWE. So maybe it's that. But still, at the end of the day, if you're going to go on a podcast like we are right now, and you're going to say something that's going to be recorded and broadcast, and then you're going to go, and I don't know if he did this personally, but then you're going to go and you're going to chop up that one part. And, we talk a lot and we joke a lot about clickbait, right? The three of us have talked about it before because, hey, listen, just pulling back the curtain here, we want people to click on our stuff, right? We want people to click on our shows. We want people to watch it. But if you're going to go through the trouble of that was in the context of a whole show, but you're going to go through the trouble of cutting out that one part and putting it out, putting Nick Aldis's name in the title of that and pulling in that crowd for that soundbite, then you're obviously trying to get that out there for some reason, even if it's just to cause a bad buzz. Well, you've done it. You've caused a bad buzz. You have, I'm not going to say awoken, because we stay woke over here in the NWA fam, but you have now alerted us to yourself, Bruce, and now you're going to hear about it, because you can't just say something like that casually and expect to get away with it and expect it to just get swept under the rug and go delete your video and act like it never happened. And the whole wrestling world's going to hear about it tomorrow morning on Busted Open Radio. And this may sound spiteful or vengeful or whatever, but he's gonna get his comeuppance for what he said.
Yeah, it's I know that there's I've listened to Something to Wrestle With, so I'm not gonna sit out here and pretend like I hate Bruce Prichard or anything like that. I've listened to the shows a bunch, but I remember they asked him about NWA Power one time, and I had this exact same thought then, because Conrad said, like, well, hey, I watched NWA Power. What do you think about it? Seems kind of cool. And he's like, well, if you like studio wrestling, there's studio wrestling. And that was like literally like his only comment about it was just like, and it just kind of dismissive. And I kind of just felt like, okay, well, that's a really garbage way of, like, you're not even giving an opinion, really. Like, you're just like, I don't know. What are you saying? Like, you say studio wrestling's all garbage because, like, a lot of history is because of studio wrestling, or a lot of history happened from. So, like, what's the point? It sounded like a guy who felt like he should have an opinion on something and just made one and had not actually even seen what he's talking about. Like Will said, talking out of turn. And that further gets cemented when I see these comments about Nick Aldis. And I'm like, dude, have you seen Nick Aldis? Besides the fact that Nick Aldis has been a champion literally everywhere he's wrestled, like, where, like, how could you look at the current NWA product and seen what the NWA has become over the couple of years that they've had to work through it, and you've thought that it was, I mean, even if you go back to like making the NWA title matter enough that it's him versus Cody Rhodes at All In, which led to the creation of AEW and all of these things. I'm not like putting all of that on Nick Aldis's shoulders. I'm just saying, don't pretend like this dude hasn't mattered. Like, he has mattered. He's been as much of a, it feels like, as much of a name as anybody in the wrestling business. So where do you get off acting like you just dismiss him? Like he's like, yeah, he just never had it. I don't know. This just seems garbage.
Studio wrestling, you're insulting Mid-Atlantic Championship Wrestling. You're insulting Crockett Promotions. You're insulting David Marquez. What are you talking about? And have you not seen and heard what Nick Aldis has done? Are you just dismissing all 60 of the defenses he had during the freaking Aldis Crusade, or not 60, but over the course of 60 days? Are you dismissing Cody Rhodes? Are you dismissing James Storm, Tim Storm, Marty Scurll? What are you talking about, man? I mean, it's just bizarre.
There's a simple solution. Just say that it's not your cup of tea. If you don't like it, just say that. Just say, hey, in my opinion, it doesn't fly for me. But when you come out and say this absolute statement, well, he doesn't have the it factor. Well, how is he in the position that he's in? And as you said, Rob, held all these championships in every promotion he's ever been in. If he doesn't have the it factor, like, who defines it? The guy who is producing, as you said, 2 shows that are flailing at the moment. Like, come on, no credibility.
He knows better. He knows better than the most vibrant wrestling community in the world. He knows better than Billy Corgan and Joe Cephas and Maureen and those guys.
Well, and also it comes down to this problem that, guys like him, they have to have an opinion on everything, right? Sometimes it's okay just to step back and not have like an absolute opinion and just say, well, I don't know, I don't watch it. But like you said, Gary, his response to that question, well, if you like studio wrestling, well, that made it very apparent he hasn't watched it, because he had nothing other than just knowing the general idea that it was studio wrestling, the NWA Power studio wrestling. He had no knowledge beyond that. So there was nothing for him to point to as far as storylines or talent or anything like that. And so we just got to start all being okay with saying, I don't know. I haven't watched it. Like this, I don't pretend to be an authority on AEW or anything like that. I may talk about a storyline or something that catches my interest, but I don't have any authority to sit here and tell you that it's bad or that it's good, because I don't watch it enough, and it may, like I will say, like I just said, maybe it's not my cup of tea. I've seen enough of it to know that, like, it's not the promotion I'm going to hang my hat on like the NWA is. But I'm not an authority on it, and people need to just become more okay with being that way. And this is a society-wide thing, and this goes beyond wrestling, not trying to take it.
Oh yeah. Here. This is anything. It's okay for you not to just say, I don't know. Like that's fine. But I mean, here's the thing too. Like I feel dirty if I like just dismiss somebody who's actually worked in the wrestling business and has had a role in the wrestling business for a long time. Rob's put it in a good way, but it's like, I look at something like this and I think to myself, like, what has Bruce Prichard done? Like, who's crediting Bruce Prichard with coming up with Stone Cold Steve Austin or The Rock, or like on what authority does Bruce Prichard stand on that he's like the guy who decides what the it factor is? Well, you kind of touched on this. And so like, I'm looking at this and I'm like, I'm sorry. And I mean this as respectfully as it could possibly come across. But I mean, it doesn't give you the authority to have played Brother Love in the late 80s and then come in and, you're best known as a corporate yes man. That does not give you the authority to decide what it is. I don't see any evidence, especially given the fact that you've now taken over the entire WWE universe as far as the booking goes, and it's seeing its lowest ratings of all time. So do we really trust this authority as being the ultimate avatar of what is true and good in professional wrestling? I don't think that we do.
Well, I think we've established that we don't hold him in that esteem, but the issue here is that he has a very large platform, and he has used that platform to talk negatively about the thing that we love, not just Nick Aldis, but the National Wrestling Alliance and the current iteration of the National Wrestling Alliance. And so, this isn't cancel culture. We're not saying, oh, screw Bruce Prichard. I'm not discounting anything he's done or the position that he's in. I'm saying that on this particular instance, the soundbite that we listened to earlier that he made public and now has taken down, I disagree with that. And I think he should at least be called to the carpet on it. And if he doesn't want to speak on it moving forward, that's fine. The champ will go talk about it in the morning on Busted Open, and we'll give his take, and I'm sure it'll be a true champion's response to these horrible criticisms. But he comes out and says, "Hey, look, I was speaking out of turn." Fine, but yeah, it is what it is.
And maybe that's a more diplomatic way to look at it, dude. Like, maybe I shouldn't go straight. Like I'm trying to attack Bruce Prichard, because he could bury me with no problem, I'm sure, if it came to that.
He's got dozens more listeners than us, so he's doing a great job, I think.
Yeah, he's handling things so good for you, Bruce Prichard. You have a bigger audience, so in the scheme of things, what I say doesn't matter. What any of us say doesn't matter. But But taking a step back, I would think that if you're going to make just a big, bold statement like he made, that Nick Aldis, for those of you joining us, I see All Japan Stand in the chat, like, what the hell is happening right now? He has no idea, so he's just like walking into it. Bruce Prichard said that Nick Aldis doesn't have it, that he just would never be a big star. Essentially, that's like why he's not in the WWE or anywhere else. Like, he's just basically just dissing Nick Aldis as a wrestler and as a champion. And so it's just, it's lit a fire. So it's just, it seems like if you're going to say some junk like that, you should have like some sort of, please cite your work. Like say, like, where is this coming from? Like, what are you basing this off of? Because in that very same company that you were working in, during the time where you were saying that he doesn't have it, he became the world champion of that company more than once. And he carried that company. Like, he was, and even as it split off into like the Global Force, like, he was the champion of that too. Like, the people that ran that business thought he was the champion. So what is the part that you're getting that from? Like, he's the guy who's carrying the NWA World's Heavyweight Championship that has been endorsed by Hardcore Funk and all of these people like Ricky Morton out there just going one-on-one with him just because he believes in him as a champion. And you like, where's the evidence here? Like, please be more specific with your feedback, sir.
Yeah, that's where I'm at too. Give some examples. Cite your sources. Tell me the promo that you didn't buy, because I didn't see that one. I've been a wrestling fan, like I said, my whole life. I haven't seen a Nick Aldis promo I didn't buy as this is Nick Aldis talking as the champ. So
he literally set the stage for NWA Power, like the very first promo, the very first episode, and it was a Bob promo. And it set the whole thing up, like, going. Like, I mean, and NWA Power was hot and critically acclaimed, like Rob Stetson always says. So,
and just seeing some stuff I'm seeing in the chat. We're not here throwing Conrad. We're not burying Conrad. Conrad just asked the questions. His show is plenty informative, and I know he promotes the NWA and supports. He was, I think, if you listen to the questioning, he was a little bit taken aback as well, just trying to call, like you guys were saying, demanding that Prichard cite his sources, essentially. So this is not a Conrad thing, but this is like, it's totally Prichard,
It's probably true, and I like Conrad. I think that Conrad's generally a positive and cool guy, and he just asked the questions. Did any of that to anyone in the chat or here or wherever? Did that sound like it was set up at all? Like that like, I think I want to go back here. This was like, I think the episode I want to say in that show that they were discussing. Yeah, here it is. Magnus is not on this show. So, like, Magnus / Nick Aldis is not even on the show. So, like, this is not a, I'm looking at it right now, and it's got, I mean, the main event is Alberto El Patron versus Lashley. You've got a women's championship with Allison Kay and Rosemary, Sanjay Dutt, Low Key, Alicia Edwards, Eddie Edwards, Angelina Love, Davey Richards, Jeremy Borash, Joseph Park, Josh Matthews, and Scott Steiner. Ethan,
if
EC3's there versus James Storm. There's no.
If you listen to that the clip that we shared that we listened to earlier, it sounds like a weird, like, offshoot of. And Conrad does seem like he's taken aback, because he even says, as they're talking about it, he says, well, I was going to move on, but since you said this,
right.
What's your view of him in the current NWA? That was specifically how he, because Prichard was talking about Magnus, and he was talking about the gimmick and stuff like that. And then Conrad he specifically said, well, this really wasn't on the agenda, but while we're here, what do you think about this? So it just seems like this weird, like, tangent that was thrown in there that really had nothing to do with what they were talking about. I don't know how they got there.
Conrad frequently talks about the NWA. It's not a rare topic, and it's usually positive, but you did have Allison Kay and Storm on the card, and so it's not like there wasn't reason to bring the NWA up. So, but it didn't feel like, I don't know. Again, I wasn't there. I don't know Conrad, but this isn't, it didn't strike me as a setup.
Yeah.
Okay. It was just a question that I
said. What do you know, bro? You know something.
No, I was just thinking, like, maybe some people feel like that it may have been discussed prior, and Conrad, like, softballed it to him to go on a rant, but I don't know. I'm just asking.
If he did,
playing devil's advocate.
If he did, he obviously regrets the choice, because it's gone now.
Let me say this too, because a lot of people think that this is tit for tat with us turning around and then calling out, Prichard's work on WWE, and the decline in ratings and all that kind of stuff. I said this earlier, and this is the three of us. We have the same viewpoint on this. We want wrestling to succeed in general, all wrestling promotions. We are the most interested in the National Wrestling Alliance, but we want to see the wrestling genre as a whole thrive. And so this is not us turning around and being petty and being like, oh, well, WWE sucks. Like, I want WWE to be awesome, you know, like I want it to be great. And this is like, I've got my own opinion about it. It doesn't have to mean that it, you know, whatever, but the fact that the ratings are in decline, that's not good for wrestling as a whole. So it's not us like saying we're not those fans that you see online that are wishing for every other organization to fail. We're actually wishing for all of them to succeed, because as our good buddy J Cal said, rising tides raise all ships. So that's how we look at the wrestling industry. And you know, it doesn't serve anybody, the NWA, AEW, Ring of Honor, any wrestling organization, Impact, for the WWE to not have a stellar product. They've got the most money, they've got the biggest production value, and so for them to not be thriving, it's an indictment on the wrestling industry as a whole. And NWA will continue to make quality content, wrestling, that kind of stuff. Obviously, we're on hiatus right now, but when you look at it as a cultural thing, WWE is going to be paramount in that picture just because they have the highest visibility, they've got the highest brand awareness, things like that. And so we want them to succeed. So this isn't us going, oh, well, you said something mean about us and we're going to go after you. We're talking about wrestling in general, and we don't wish for the WWE or Bruce Prichard to fail. But you're going to come out with a comment like that, at least be coming from a place of like success, you know, in the industry right now. So.
Yeah. No, I hate him, and I hope he fails.
Stop. Sorry.
No, I'm just kidding.
I speak for Rob and I then, apparently.
No, I'm just kidding, man. No, it really does tonight. That's more well said than I was even putting it. That it's just that, yeah, it just feels like I that's what I keep saying when I'm trying to talk about. Like, I don't have any more room to talk about this than Bruce Prichard. I get it. Bruce Prichard's been in the business for a very long time. He's obviously familiar with what goes into it a little more than even I am. It's just that, dude, if you're going to just bury somebody right now who's just trying to earn a living, just like you, who's not signed to like the biggest, like multi-million-dollar corporation there is in the business, like for you to just like, it's punching down is what it's called in like comedy and everything. It's like you're punching down right now. Like you're working for the biggest possible place that anybody could work for, and you've got to take a second out of your day to like bury somebody who's independently working and striving to make themselves better and to do something, and it just feels dirty. And especially when you're in a position that like nothing right now feels like it's so much more successful that you should just be like, I obviously know everything and the answers, so I can tell you that this guy blows. That just feels wrong.
Yep.
Our show, everybody. Did I freeze up again? I don't know.
Yeah,
you did.
At the end, like I lost. I saw your mouth moving, but I couldn't hear anything.
That seems like you sound like.
Oh, that's wife. A cool can you have there. What is that?
Oh yeah, this is Invisibeer.
Wait, where did we get our NWA? This is the NWA podcast beer from. That's cool.
Yeah, nice. It's kind of like my water bottle.
We really got to look into this merch. We should at least have koozies, for God's sake, so we can just cover this up.
Okay, I'll do it. Yeah.
Chat room, what's up? We got to start wrapping this thing up, or Will I don't know what Will's about to say. That's what he was about to say. Oh, WWE front row. No, we did not see Raven's comments. I mean, no. I don't think so.
I'm over Raven.
I know he's.
Come on, no more Raven. I mean, I like Raven, but no.
You got me Googling stuff. Come on, man.
Yeah, where's Raven's comments? Oh my God. I don't know what he's.
Let me pull up my Alta Vista web browser.
Is he under Scott Levy? I don't follow Raven, so I'm trying to find him. Now I want to know.
Let's see.
Like, he doesn't even come up in my search. Like, I'm trying to find Raven and I can't find it. Dave Scooby says free koozie with a cat purchase. I like that.
Ooh.
I like that deal.
Yeah, fun fact about these caps. Check out.
Oh no, we failed, by the way. On the front row was making a joke about Raven last week.
Oh God, we totally bit on that.
Yeah, we all
man.
missed it.
We totally bit. Well,
Sorry for
We do that crap all the time too, man. What? It's the schedule. This whole scheduling system we're on now has got us thrown off our game.
stop. Listen, don't
Yeah.
talk bad about the.
Now I
scheduling
can't tell if Randall G's joking. He said, "Do you guys ever watch old NWA stuff on YouTube?"
It's a throwback.
I
It's
can't
a
tell if
callback,
that's a
yeah.
joke.
It's a
No,
callback. NWA just started.
because we
man.
do.
There is no old stuff.
Oh my gosh.
We just did this whole episode about Great American Bash 1986 that we are just wrapping up now is it's lost on everyone. Man, I just really thought Raven said something else because I kept trying to see if he would say anything about what's Corgan like set out a statement, but front row says Tequila Gary would have gotten that reference.
Got my
Sorry,
heart
buddy.
rate up front row. Damn.
Well, unless you guys have something major to call back to that we get, or some subject that you want to discuss, we probably do have to start wrapping this thing up, at least for the live show. We're on a schedule now, so
Well, we got another
gotta-
show in 2 days. We got to save some stuff. And guess what?
true.
In 2 days, we'll have this Busted Open Radio interview to talk about. So go ahead and make sure that you are with us on Tuesday night at 8 because that will prove to be a good one.
We'll do
yeah,
a deep dive.
I'm excited about that.
A deep dive into the life and legacy of Brother Love.
I'm already trying to find the least flattering picture of Bruce Prichard to put on the thumbnail. It's not hard. Well, it's hard to figure out which one. Never mind. Let's save it for Tuesday.
Womp womp. Yeah, no, this will be fun. Can't wait to settle in tomorrow morning and find out, probably from you guys, since I don't have Sirius, what's being said. So
I'll help you out, Gary.
thanks, buddy. All right. Well, if there's nothing else from the chat room, we love you guys. It's that's at Hey, it's Will. I'm at This is Gary Horde, and that's at something Stinson. RD Stinson at R Stinson. Like, no consistency with this guy. Just look, just search Nick Aldis Stan, and you will find him. There he is. Doc McLovin,
And
Rob
Dr.
Stinson.
Club, yeah. And to quote the great Brother Love, guys, we love you.
It's true. We do love you guys. So thank you guys for joining us. We'll see you Tuesday night. And until then, enjoy your great